everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon in the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It is May 31st. We are talking to you live. It's midweek. It's Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about something that I think is very important, a critical issue. Is our election. It's 2024 and how it's going to be affecting every single one of us. Now, we are live, I believe, on Rumble. We are live on Politics. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and a few others as well. And I hope they're going to hear me all right. Please let me know if you have any difficulty hearing my voice. But this is a big deal. See, every year for a presidential election, the American news media, the major news media, hate to talk about international politics. But in 2024, what happens in our election will affect our economy. It will affect the global stability, whether you're going on vacation or business. It's going to affect the green energy. It's going to affect everything. That's the foreign policy that we're talking about, because China is deeply involved. And that means that, and we believe, that China will be invading Taiwan. Matter of fact, we know China will invade Taiwan. They have told us this. They've made it very clear. We can see from the most recent news. Oops, I don't have my face up there. Hang on. There I am. We know that Taiwan is currently conducting exercises. They're trying to cut off the Taiwanese internet. They are taking actions to threaten Taiwan as we speak. In fact, we've been told about this. Well, let me walk you through this. Let's walk through this. I'm going to, hey, Graham, thank you for being the first one to make a comment. But let me start at the very beginning. See, in 2019, the American news media in 2020 did not want to talk about international politics. They didn't want to talk about China because possibly the relationship between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the connection to China. They didn't want to talk, the Republicans didn't want to talk about it either. Why? Because of Russia collusion and the Ukraine phone call. It was just a bad subject. And most Americans don't pay attention to international politics, even though it affects each and every one of us. And that led us to 2021. Where Russia started watching very carefully. They were making some moves, talking about getting active in the Ukraine. The thing that kicked it all off, of course, was what we saw was called the victory of the Biden-Harris administration. The victory that turned out to be the most embarrassing retreat of U.S. troops since Saigon. It was a massive and intense embarrassment for the United States, and it set the stage for the rest of the world to look at the Biden-Harris administration and America as weak. Now, when they did that, then we saw that Russia decided to take action. And just as I was talking about just on Monday, on Memorial Day with Larry Sharp and some guests on his program, there were 30,000 Americans as a result that have been abandoned. There were 5,000 in Afghanistan abandoned by the Biden-Harris administration, 10,000 in the Ukraine in 2022, as we were told by Lester Holt on NBC News by Joe Biden. And then this year, just a month ago, 15,000 Americans abandoned in the Sudan. We have seen this consistently. This is a sign of weakness. And that's one of the reasons why we saw Russia go into the Ukraine, ignoring the threats of economic sanctions and economic proxy war. And that's led us to where we are today. Increased energy prices, reduction in food. There's a global 30% global food crisis that we are all suffering on that is leading in many countries, like in the United Kingdom. Inflation has gone up because of the price of food. And of course, there's been a supply chain from China that has been reduced, hurting jobs, hurting the economy. So going into 2024, this is a big deal. And let's not kid ourselves. China is massively important. You see, when the rest of the nation was looking at Russia and saying, what is Russia going to do? Well, the U.S. Army War College started talking about what is China going to do about Taiwan. This is from November 17th of 2021, when we were talking about Afghanistan, when we were talking about Russia invading Ukraine. The United States Army War College was talking about what's China doing in Taiwan, which will affect our technology, it will affect our economy. The voices were early in. In August of 2022, we saw that China reaffirmed they threatened Taiwan. They're going to take it over. We know that for a fact. They made the case clear. And then we have seen in January of this year and April of this year that China has renewed their threat. We know that whoever wins in 2024 will be dealing with China invading Taiwan. And so the question we have in this video is, who should be in charge? Let's assume, as we have heard from an Air Force Army general, as we have seen from Japan building up its military, Japan expects to have its military done by 2028. South Korea is threatening to build nuclear weapons and becoming the fourth largest arms manufacturer in the world. That will be done by 2027. We believe that 2027 is possibly the year that China will invade Taiwan. That's what Southeast Asia seems to be telling us. That's what Air Force generals are telling us. That is what we are seeing happening before our eyes. Now, if that is the case, who needs to be in the White House? Who is the best person to deal with that situation? We know the threat is real. We know the threat is building up, but who's the one to deal with it? We're going to talk with you about that. We're going to rank all of the candidates, all of them, 7 candidates that are involved in, that look to be in the 2024 presidential election, Democrats and Republicans. And we are going to put together a list, a ranking of all of these individuals for you so that you get to make the decision. And when I say that, I mean, we're going to do the classic S, A, B, C, D tier. And we're going to be listening to your comments. We're going to talk about these people, and I want to hear from you, your phone calls, your tweets, your chats, to tell me who do you think is the best person as we look at who is out there right now. There are 8 candidates. There's Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Marianne Williamson, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and Vivek Ramaswamy are the leading individuals according to what we can see from Real Clear Politics. These are the people who are most likely to be running for the presidency in 2024. These are the people that are most likely to have to deal with China invading Taiwan in 2027. And I hope to hear from you. You'll see it on the screen above. It'll be coming across. You'll be able to call in to 607-242-9247 to tell us what you think about any of these candidates as we discuss them and we try and make that decision. Now, Graham has already mentioned Marianne Williamson will dissuade the Chinese Communist Party from attacking Taiwan using the power of love as a political force. That's pretty funny, Graham. I like that. Well, we're going to get into it, and I'm going to show you exactly what these candidates are saying, exactly where they stand right now on these issues. And I think it's very important that we understand that. And I'm pretty sure we should be live on Rumble right now. I'm just trying to check. Bear with me one second. I want to make sure that this is up live. Is it live on Rumble? It should be live on Rumble. Don't know if it's going out live on Rumble or not. But I want to make sure that we know exactly. No, it is not going out live on Rumble. Why is it not going out live on Rumble? I don't know. Okay, I will deal with Rumble later. So let's talk about these candidates. Let's talk about these individuals. Graham says, YouTube won't let me post the link. One of Marianne Williamson's slogans from 2020 was turn love into a political force. Well, I'm going to go through all of them. I'm going to show you what these candidates are saying right now. It sounds like Graham is not in favor of Marianne Williamson. Okay, But let's start with the biggest name out there, which is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is going to run again in 2024. Now, what we know about Joe Biden's position, what we have is track record. Joe Biden started off 2021 losing Afghanistan and then threatening Russia with appeasement. His first initial reaction was to try and just convince the Ukraine to give up their land, to let Russia take over the Ukrainian, let them take over the crops, the food, let them take the land and have access to the Mediterranean. That was his first thought. The next thing that we saw was that, And then we saw, and this is in December of 2021, at the same time that the U.S. War College was terrified of China, we were asking, how many Americans did Joe Biden leave in Afghanistan? He told us 100. It wound up being 5,000. That's the current number. 5,000 remain right now. There are up to 200 individuals that are currently being held by ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Americans who have been captured by the terrorists who want to kill Americans. And we know this is a fact. This is coming from the DOD and the State Department. So that's where we see. And we know that in 2021, the biggest lie was that every American was back home, that everyone got to be safe. And we know that he followed that up in 2022, telling American citizens that he would not go into the Ukraine to save 10,000 Americans, including children, because of the war that was pending. He had the opportunity. He said, no, figure it out yourself. Find your own way home. And now we see that just last month, the United States ran out of the Sudan. They ran away. They closed the embassy, walked away, and left 15,000 Americans stranded in a war-torn war zone in Africa. So we have a pretty good understanding about where Joe Biden stands on this issue. Joe Biden doesn't care. Joe Biden is willing to throw American citizens under a bus. That seems to be pretty clear. His position is he wants to run away. He doesn't want to be involved in an active war zone. So if Joe Biden were to be elected in 2024, am I wrong when I say I think Joe Biden is going to abandon Taiwan? That he has no faith, no trust, he doesn't care. He would give up Taiwan to the Chinese. Now, whether that's because of his relationship with Hunter Biden and the money that may or may not be connected to him from China, I don't know. But he seems weak. Am I wrong? Does anyone disagree with that? And if that is the case, that we have seen repeatedly, Joe Biden is willing to throw away tens of thousands of American lives just so he could get a better political position because he's worried about the next election, I would have to believe that in 2027, preparing for the 2028 election, Joe Biden's going to be looking out for Democrats and their potential re-election, and not whether or not Americans are safe, not the U.S. economy, not our allies around the world. This is the way I see that, and that's based on what Joe Biden has actually done. So if that's correct, I have to say, Joe Biden's D tier. He's probably the worst person we can pick out of the entire list, because his example, his experience has shown us he doesn't care. And I'm going to get to Marianne Williamson. I'll probably go with Marianne Williamson next, just because Graham's talking about her. But I have to think that Joe Biden is definitely D tier, because look at what he has done. Now, no matter what he promises you, remember, he promised you in 2020 that he would unite America. Then he demonized people for not getting the jab. Then he demonized people for saying that America should be great. He's not a uniter. So don't go by his promises. Let's go by what we have seen. He abandons Americans on a regular basis. He ignores that they exist. He didn't mention any of them during Memorial Day weekend, did he? No. 30,000 Americans in harm's way. Japan is building an army because they don't trust him. Yeah, I think that Joe Biden is D tier. He would not be able to handle China invading Taiwan. He would give up Taiwan. What about Marianne Williamson? Let's take a look at her. What do we think about Marianne Williamson? She's also a Democrat who is looking to run. Here we go. Marianne Williamson, and going by Real Clear Politics. Again, I want to make sure that I'm giving the best information I can. Going to Real Clear Politics, and if we look, Marianne Williamson right now is got about 6.8% of Democrats are looking, or popularity is about 6.8%. She's bottom of the barrel. But, you know, she ran in 2020. She did better. And even right now, she has more people supporting her than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris topped out at 5%. Marianne Williamson is more popular than the person sitting in the vice president seat right now. What would Marianne Williamson do if she were the president in 2027? Well, according to Marianne Williamson's own website, going to her page, and I'm going to do this for all of the top 8 people. Let's check this out. What did she say? She's going to go for peace. She's going to create a U.S. Department of Peace. I can see that China is quaking in their boots right now. I can see that Iran is saying that this is going to be devastating. They won't be able to handle that. Russia will obviously stop all of their actions in the Ukraine now that Moscow has been bombed, and the Russian people are rallying because the capital of Russia has been attacked. I can see them all stopping and say, well, it's the Department of Peace in the United States. It's all over. This is what we're looking at. Both domestically and internationally, we must dramatically ramp up the use of proven powers of peace building, including dialogue, meditation, conflict resolution, economic and social development, restorative justice, public health approaches to violence prevention, trauma-informed systems of care, social and emotional learning in schools, and many others. This is what she thinks is going to stop Putin. This is what she thinks is going to stop Chairman Xi from going into Taiwan, like he is right now, shutting off their internet and making the people disappear like the Uyghurs in China. That this is going to stop the radical religious fanatics in Iran that are poisoning their own children. Iran is poisoning schoolgirls because they're learning to read and write. And Marianne Williamson thinks that she will just be able to go out there and meditate with the Ayatollah, that she will meditate with Chairman Xi, that she will be able to go through social justice to stop Putin. Let me ask you folks, does anyone think that's real? I mean, as Graham mentioned, she wants to turn love into a political force. Do you think that Putin is worried about whether or not he's loved by Americans or anyone else? Do you think that Chairman Xi of the Chinese Communist Party is worried about whether or not the people of Taiwan or Japan or South Korea love him? Do you think the Ayatollah Khomeini is worried about whether or not gay people or trans people, Americans, anyone who doesn't believe exactly what he believes is going to be swayed by their feelings of love or justice reform, social justice? I truly don't believe so. And again, Jason from Bing says, thank you, Jason, for joining us. He says, if she identifies as a man, they might actually believe her. Yeah, because, you know, if she's not a man, most of those countries don't even recognize her. So I have to believe that based on what she is telling us in her own webpage, again, this is what she has said in the past, and this is what she's saying now. A U.S. Department of Peace will end war. Well, if China is invading Taiwan, which will hurt our technology, semiconductors, our ability to move forward, and that means that China will cut our manufacturing. They will stop supplying 40% of the goods to the United States. I don't think peace is going to have much of a chance with that. I don't think that's going to work. I have to say that if we're ranking this, Marianne Williamson She's right there with Joe Biden. That's D tier. Joe Biden's going to run away, and Marianne Williamson's going to run around with the flower power and say, peace, peace and love, and it's not going to work. Maybe that's why she's at 6.8% in popularity among Democrats for the 2024 nomination. Maybe you think I'm right. Maybe you think I'm wrong. I want to hear what you have to say. I know this is being suppressed by YouTube, by Facebook, by Twitter, that they are making it hard for people to see this. I want to hear what you have to say about this, folks. I want to hear your comments. Graham says, I think the Department of Peace would not stop authoritarian leaders, but it could inspire indigenous populations to rise up against their respective authoritarian regimes. So let me understand, Graham. You think that if Marianne Williamson is preaching peace and social justice, that the people of Iran are going to rise up and revolt. These are the same people who are actively rising up and revolting right now because their schoolgirls are being poisoned and killed. These are the same people who are in Russia right now opposing the war. These are the same people like the Uyghurs, the religious group in China that disappeared, the leaders of Hong Kong that disappeared. I don't think that works. We already have people around the world who are fighting against these rogue nations, saying they want to have a revolution, and it's not working now. I don't think Marianne Williamson has a chance. She's got a chance of a snowball in hell of actually being able to be effective. Now, if there's a Democrat or anyone who wants to tell me, Mike, you're wrong, Marianne, meditation is the answer, please give me a reason. Show me an example in the world, and I will change the ranking. But I have to believe, based on what we've seen and based on her inexperience, she's D tier. No one in the world actually believes she has a chance of doing anything to help America or any of our allies. I could be wrong. So we've talked about Joe Biden. We've talked about Marianne Williamson. By the way, folks, you can call in 607-242-9247 and tell me you think I'm wrong. Tell me you think that this candidate should be ranked higher. Please let me know. Graham says, Marianne Williamson aside, I think there is an inspirational value in taking the moral high ground as part of a long-term, sustainable foreign policy. Yeah, it's wonderful to say peace and love, and maybe if it were Gandhi, maybe if it were Martin Luther King, but no matter how inspirational you may want to be, it doesn't stop a bullet. Inspiration, I wish that were the case. I just don't see that stopping China. I don't see that stopping Russia. I don't see that stopping Iran or North Korea. I don't think I wish the world were a better place, but it's not. And so while that feels good, it's not effective. I just don't see it. Maybe there's a Democrat, maybe there's someone who likes Marianne Williamson that can tell me definitively, besides the feeling, give me a reason why they think she could actually do the job, to be able to send in troops or to change these countries from doing what they're doing, especially China in 2027. But let me go on to another candidate. Graham mentions arming populations with weapons, providing them training. All that's left is motivation and inspiration. And economic policy, threat of actual warfare, a coalition of nations, both with sanctions and other actions to try and attack a country, tariffs. There's a lot of other things that are left. We don't have to just arm populations. Every nation in the world doesn't have to be Ukraine, but we have to do something else. We have to do more. And you know what? Knowing that there are nations that will in fact say, hey, we're going to provide them weapons. Yeah, that's also a deterrent too. I truly think that is. How about this? Let's look at the other Democrat that is also in this race. Someone who's also popular. And going by Real Clear Politics, there is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr. He is currently ranking at about 16.8%, according to Real Clear Politics. He's about 40 points below Joe Biden, okay? Which makes him yet another underdog. But this is someone that Democrats are looking to. This is someone Democrats are saying this is a real choice. He could really do something about it. Going to the Kennedy 2024 website. So again, I'm not being impartial. I'm not being biased here. I'm going to their words. I'm giving you what they are talking about because no one in the major news media is talking about international politics. No one is asking, what if this happens? What will you do? The mainstream major media is failing you because they won't talk about this. This is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says. Peace. He's right there with Marianne Williamson. His answer is to run away, to keep out. His answer is, as president, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will start the process of unwinding empire. He's going to unwind the American empire. He's going to make America less great. He's going to make America a second-class nation. That's what he just said. He will start the process of unwinding America. We will bring the troops home. He's going to run away. That's something that Joe Biden has already done. We've seen what happens when America runs away from Afghanistan, Ukraine, when we run away from Sudan. That's 30,000 Americans that were left abandoned around the world. He wants to run away. We will stop racking up unpayable debt to fight one war after another. That part I can agree with. The military will return to its proper role of defending our country. We will become isolationist, which we can't do because we have international trade, because we have allies like NATO, like Japan, like South Korea, like the Philippines. We can't just run away. We will end the proxy wars. He's going to give up on Ukraine. He's going to abandon the Ukraine as well as the American citizens. He'll stop bombing campaigns, which is good. No more drones like Obama. Covert operations, coups, paramilitaries, and everything else that has become so normal, most people don't know it's happening. But it is happening, a constant drain on our strength. It's time to come home and restore the country. Robert F. Kennedy's answer is run away, stick your head in the sand. Forget about our allies. Forget about the Americans that are overseas. Don't worry about the communists of China invading Taiwan or any other nation. Robert F. Kennedy is saying that he doesn't care what happens to Europe. He doesn't care what happens to our allies in Germany, in France, in the United Kingdom. His answer, and he has 16% of Democrats that are supporting him, is run away, stick our heads in the sand. It doesn't matter. Let those countries go. Maybe you agree with that. Maybe you think that's the right answer. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's even possible. You're talking about, okay, we give up Taiwan, we give up Japan. That means we don't have semiconductors. It affects our ability to do research. You believe in green energy? Well, guess what? We won't be able to do it without the technology from the semiconductors coming from Taiwan and Southeast Asia. And China has all the heavy metals that you need for solar farms and wind farms, all of that technology. He's going to give it all up. His answer is actually worse than what we're hearing from Marianne Williamson. At least, like Graham mentioned, she's trying for inspiration and motivation. She's at least trying to inspire peace. You know, maybe like a Martin Luther King or a Mahatma Gandhi or a Mother Teresa. At least she's trying to give a message there. His answer, Robert F. Kennedy, his answer, according to his website, is saying, run away. His answer is just get rid of the American empire. Get rid of America. Make America lesser, less than. That's his answer. Do you think that an America that is like Obama has suggested, like some of the far left have suggested, America is just an evil, bad place, and so we stick our head in the sand. Do you think that stops Iran from running around the world trying to force people to believe what the Ayatollah Khamenei believes? Do you think that America sticking our head in the sand will stop Russia from going into Estonia, Lithuania, into Latvia, from trying to take over more of Europe? Do you think that's going to help heat the homes in Germany or make our friends in the United Kingdom any safer? Do you think that's going to stop, well, I said Iran, I mentioned Russia, and of course China. Do you think that stops any of them? Because Japan is building up an army because they can't stick their heads in the sand. And we have a treaty. We have a treaty since 1960 to protect Japan. So you can't stick your head in the sand and say, well, we're America, we're not playing this game anymore. But we've got a treaty with NATO. We've got a treaty with Japan. We have a treaty with South Korea. And if they get attacked, we have to do something. But RFK is saying, nope, instead we're just going to take our toys and sit in our own house. We're going to get out of the sandbox. That doesn't even sound realistic. Again, I'm trying to give him all the credibility I can. This is what he is saying. These are their words on their websites. That's what the people who want to run this nation. Does anyone disagree with me when I say that if we have to rank him, well, he's going to be right there, right alongside Marianne Williamson and Joe Biden. They are all D tier. None of these things are effective. You can call in. Please, if you think I am wrong, if there is another way to look at this, I think it's 607-242-9247. Call in and tell me, Mike, you just missed something. You're not quite understanding it. Okay, fantastic. What have I missed? What am I not understanding about this? Because all I can see is they're saying, run away, hide, America isn't great, give up everything and everyone. That's what the Democrats are saying in 2024. If there are Democrats out there, there are progressives out there, if there is any elected Democrat anywhere in America that thinks I have gotten this wrong so far, call in. I will give you as much time as you need to show me how I am wrong. If there is a elected Democrat, a candidate anywhere in America, if Marianne Williamson or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or anyone who supports Joe Biden would like to call in and tell me I am misunderstanding their words and their actions, I will give you as much time as you need to prove me wrong. But based on the actions of Joe Biden, based on the words of Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they will throw America under a bus because they are afraid of being a leader. I want to be clear about that. They are afraid of being a leader. And because they're afraid of being a leader, America must suffer. That's our choice in 2024 for the Democrats. They're all D tier. Not one of them will be able to protect America in 2027 against China, which means China moves forward. China will invade Taiwan in 2027. That's the prediction. If you think I'm wrong, I'm happy to hear it. But how about this? We've talked about the Democrats. I've shown you what the Democrats had to say. What about the Republicans? What did the Republicans have to say about this? Obviously, the big voice is Donald Trump. Let's save Donald Trump for last. Okay? Let's save Donald Trump for last. Let's look at this and let's go back to Real Clear Politics. And let's look at, according to Real Clear Politics, the top people involved in this at this moment are going to be, according to this, we have Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott. Now, I'm not counting in this, I'm not counting Mike Pence. I don't think he's a real candidate. I don't think he's a real choice. I don't think most Americans, whether Republican or independent, libertarian, I don't think they care about Mike Pence, and I don't think he has any credibility to him. He's reversed his position just too many times. So he's not a real candidate, I don't believe. He currently has 3.8% of interest, but I don't think that goes anywhere. So I'm not counting him. So let's look at Tim Scott. What does Tim Scott have to say? And let's bring him up. And this is from Tim Scott. This is from Tim Scott's website for his 2024 reelection. And going directly to, and I think this is accurate here, national security, because he doesn't have anything on foreign security. He doesn't have anything on foreign policy. He's ignoring that. But the closest thing we have is his position on national security. Security starts at our borders, but it doesn't end there. The Chinese Communist Party's goal is not just to surpass us, it's to beat us. As president, I will rebuild a military so lethal and powerful that our adversaries will fear us and our allies will respect us. Well, listening to that, Tim Scott is taking the position pretty much exactly opposite that of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Whereas Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he wants to be an isolationist, he wants to stick his head in the sand and pretend that it's all going to go away. While Marianne Williamson's going to meditate on it, we're hearing Tim Scott say, no, build up the United States military. Increase the size of the Navy, get our recruitment levels back up to par, and we're going to stand there with our allies. This is important. It's exactly opposite of what we're hearing from Joe Biden. And he says, one of the key points, peace through strength. Again, he's addressing this national concern. Peace through strength can only be achieved if we have the most capable fighting force on the planet. Okay, so he wants a strong military. And he also is looking at economic prosperity. As Biden sends us deeper and deeper into debt, the Chinese Communist Party, he only further fuels China's rise. And we will win the next century by the strength of our economy. Okay? And our military is not a social experiment. We must show the world we are prepared and serious about winning the next century. So, according to what Tim Scott is saying, what he has written down, his belief is build up the U.S. military, get rid of the warm and fuzzy feelings, no more of this two-mom military, no more of this, let's turn the military into trans. He wants to focus on the traditional military. He wants to make sure our military is strong, and he wants to threaten China, Iran, Russia with military force. It's a very strong position. It's pretty much Trump's position. Agent Black out of the United Kingdom, thank you for joining us. I know it's a lot later for you than most people here in the United States watching this. I hope you find this interesting. So we are ranking. Again, we are ranking all these candidates, the top 8 individuals running for 2024. And again, we're saying if China invades Taiwan in 2027, we know they will invade Taiwan. We just don't know when. But all the data so far seems to point to around 2027. And if that is the case, the person who wins in 2024 will be dealing with this. So far, all the Democrats look D-list, and Tim Scott is the first of the Democrats that we are looking, the first of the Republicans we are looking at that says, what's his answer? So while he hasn't been directly asked about this, his answer is, we need a strong military. He seems to say, we're going to go in with the U.S. military, and I don't know if that means we're going to defend Taiwan or if we're going to threaten Russia with defending Taiwan. It's not clear. But I take the key words, peace through strength can only be achieved. Excuse me. Peace through strength can only be achieved if we have the most capable fighting force. That he wants to rebuild the U.S. military. That makes me think he's willing to say to China, we will put in troops into Taiwan to defend Taiwan, that we would actually send troops to back up Japan and Japan's new army. So, but he doesn't have a lot of international experience. How is Europe going to be affected by that? How would he deal with NATO? What's his position on the Middle East? It's not clear. So he has a stronger position than we've seen than any of the Democrats so far, but it's unclear what kind of experience he actually has on international policy. So if we're looking at Tim Scott, he's definitely not in the D tier with the Democrats. I wouldn't say C tier. I would put him as a B tier candidate because he has a willingness to stand up. He has a willingness to stand up by our allies, and he is very much looking at it as a war hawk, looking at strong military is essential for a strong United States. And he also understands there's an economic background. Now, maybe you would rate Tim Scott higher. Maybe you would rate him lower. Again, I'm happy to hear whatever anyone has to say, but I'm only going by the information that we do have from these candidates and what they have definitely said to the world. So we have to go by that. We have to try and figure out what they're saying there. Let me go to the next person on the list. And again, this is all open. You can call in anytime you want, but the next person would be Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy is currently rated at 2.6%. His popularity is 2.6%. That's above Tim Scott. It's better than a sitting current senator of the United States. That's pretty good for a brand new guy. He's a brand new voice in politics. He's a young man, according to politics. I believe he's about 38. He's unproven. Now, that's important. And I'm going to get to your comment in 1 second. Agent Black mentioned Trump's already stood up to China and Russia, proven strong candidate. Well, I'm going to get to Trump too. I'm going to save Trump for last as we go through the list. But I'm trying to make sure, I'm trying to be as fair as I can be so that American people have something to think about. Because the mainstream news media won't do this. They won't actually give you a scenario and actually talk about this. They won't give people something to think about. So I'm saying Vivek Ramaswamy, what we do know about him is he's brand new, he's unproven, he's not elected, he has no international experience. But he's young and he's energetic. And if we look at Vivek Ramaswamy and we go to his website itself, he directly has something on declaring independence from communist China. He directly is taking on this issue. So he recognizes, like the U.S. War College, the U.S. Army College, that this is an important issue and it must be discussed. Vivek's plan also includes investing in American innovation and technology advancements to reduce our dependence on China. He believes in promoting and incentivizing research, development in key sectors such as semiconductors and artificial intelligence to maintain our leadership in these fields. By unleashing the power of American ingenuity, Vivek is confident we can break free of China's hold and secure a brighter future. So it's interesting because there is nothing that Vivek has that directly addresses international policy in terms of conflict. He doesn't have anything that addresses China going into Taiwan that I was able to see to be able to bring to you today. Maybe in the future he will. But he seems to be looking at it as, well, the answer is we have to have more technology. Bring more technology of STEM into the United States, and that will defeat China. It will take away their manufacturing base and weaken them economically. So he essentially wants to have an economic proxy war. Let me ask you, do you think an economic proxy war will stop China? Did it stop Russia from going into the Ukraine? No. Russia is doing better economically today than it was doing before the sanctions from Joe Biden. And it didn't stop them from going in. It didn't prevent them from deciding to use their military. So I understand his economic focus, but it doesn't really address the real world situation because Iran has had economic sanctions since the 1980s, and that has never stopped them. The Taliban have economic sanctions against them. That hasn't stopped them from harming women or having Americans be captured by ISIS and Al Qaeda. China doesn't care about economic sanctions. They're doing business with Russia and Iran and North Korea, and they make 40% of all of our goods anyway. That doesn't stop them. That doesn't prevent them from doing anything, and it doesn't instill them fear, and it doesn't really protect Taiwan. In fact, if we're looking at his words, he's saying that we need to make semiconductors and artificial intelligence. We have to take over the technology. Well, that means that it kind of sounds like we're abandoning Taiwan. We're abandoning Southeast Asia. It doesn't sound like we're standing by our allies. We're replacing our allies. And yeah, I want America to be great, and I want America to be strong. But Vivek isn't remembering that we have international partners, we have allies, we have treaties, we have agreements. You can't just say, well, we'll just do it ourselves. America can't do it all by ourselves. We can't be everywhere in the world all at once. And so if China's going in and they're trying to take over countries, if they're building up a navy so they can go around Southeast Asia and take over countries, they're not worried about whether or not we can make a better semiconductor. They don't care about making quality goods anyway. Yes, we'll make the best semiconductor in the world, no doubt. I'm sure America can. That doesn't mean that China's going to still be pumping out imitation fake ones. I mean, you look at Adidas or Nike, some of the best sneakers people tell me in the world. People are paying hundreds of dollars for these sneakers, and China's making bootleg copies that cost $20, and they don't care they're not making the best one. So that doesn't really stop them. And because of that, I think Vivek is kind of lower rated. He has a lower rank because it doesn't make sense. Yes, it's good for America to be strong. It's good for America to be independent, but we have allies, and our enemies aren't swayed by saying, well, we have the best quality. I like Vivek. I think he's a very interesting voice, but I think he's C-tier. He doesn't have enough experience. He's not thinking about what are the consequences. What stops China? What stops Russia? What stops Iran? What makes them do something different? It's better than saying we're going to run away. It's better than saying we're just going to meditate on the issue. It's better than saying we're just going to be isolationists. At least Vivek is saying we're going to make America strong, but it's not enough. We have to think about what our allies are doing. We have to think about actually, economics. The cost of things doesn't stop an army from walking across the border and trying to take over a country. So I would rank Vivek as a C rank. Again, better. D rank is the lowest that we have. I should have probably created an even lower rank, but D rank is the lowest rank that I have. And as you can see, I have Biden, who I've already discussed, is on that D rank. So Vivek is in the C rank, I think. Now, if someone thinks I am wrong, if you think he should be ranked higher, maybe he said something directly about Taiwan that I missed. I'm happy to change that. Call into 607-242-9247. Let's have that conversation. But I don't see Vivek having the experience internationally, and his plans, according to his website, aren't very clear. It makes me think he's a little bit weak. Okay, so I've covered that one. Who else is on the Republican ticket? Well, we still have left, we've gone through Tim Scott, we've talked about Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley. What does Nikki Haley have to present to us? And I have Nikki Haley is, where do I have her? Hang on a second, I lost her page. Here it is. Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley specifically, back on July 21st of 2020, was talking about supporting Taiwan. She's one of the few candidates in the entire list that actually talks about Taiwan. and that she has some international experience, that she's actually looking forward, looking at what China is doing, and is trying to consider what they will do in the future. She's one of the few candidates, besides Joe Biden, besides Donald Trump. Nikki Haley is the only one who's actually considered and has a plan in dealing directly with China, growing its power, trying to take over Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Southeast Asia, and the regional war that that would create. So that's already a bonus. She's already standing up there. And she says several things here. We have to enact laws with stronger sanctions. We have to support Hong Kong. She's the only one talking about the fact that Hong Kong has already been destroyed by China and the Chinese communists. And she understands that we need aircraft carriers in the Southeast China Sea. She says, as I've said many times before, if the United States doesn't stand up to China on Hong Kong, Taiwan will be next. Well, we didn't stand up to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong's gone. And now Taiwan is next. So she was correct in what she said. The Chinese Communist Party has stopped saying it wants a peaceful reunification with Taiwan. She's right. We know, we've seen that, as I showed you. They have been saying consistently that they are going to go in and they are going to take over. They're saying, they're threatening. They're going to use force. They're going to invade. She's accurate on that. So in 2020, she was accurately seeing the problem, and she was accurately trying to give us an answer. Now, as always, the key to peace is strength. So she has a lot to say here. And she's been a U.S. ambassador. She has international policy experience. She has experience dealing with other nations and understanding the connection between the United States and the rest of the world. The Chinese Communist Party hates America's support for Taiwan because it fears the example that Taiwan sets. While mainland China is mired in tyranny, Taiwan is a marvel of freedom. No wonder America has supported them, because they are a symbol of freedom. So she wants to authorize more than $8 billion in military sales to Taiwan, including F-16s. She wants to get missile defensive upgrades for Taiwan to threaten the Chinese. She wants to have a U.S. Navy that's going to be stronger and protecting the Taiwanese Strait. She wants to actually actively get involved. So this is kind of like what we see with Tim Scott, except Nikki Haley has the experience. She has international experience that Tim Scott doesn't have. She's worked as an ambassador. She understands what our allies are looking for. Japan is building an army because they have no faith in the United States. Nikki Haley is saying she recognizes that and she wants to give them something to believe in. Okay. And she's directly saying what Tim Scott said is we need a strong military, not a weak and smaller military, but a bigger and stronger military. And that will help us both economically as well as saving people's lives and possibly stopping a war, a regional war, Southeast Asia war going forward. Again, we can only go. And she was saying this in 2020. She has the foresight. She can predict the future to a degree. She understands what are the consequences of what's happening. And she's the only one on the list so far that has that foresight in that manner. So I have to rank her pretty well. And in fact, I would have to say that Nikki Haley, she's probably A tier, because she has the experience. Not just that she wants to support our military, not only is she trying to support our economy, not only is she trying to support the world economy, but she also has a plan. She has a plan, and she's been working on this for a while. I'd put her at an A tier. She has the experience. Do you think so? Do you think I'm right? I like to hear what you have to say. Not just like Agent Black, who's talking to us from the United Kingdom, just like we've heard from Graham, who's out in California. I want to hear from everyone, whether you're a libertarian, a conservative, a Republican, a Democrat, a progressive. I want to hear what you say about this list. What do you think? And you can call in. The phone line is on 607-242-9247. If you're an elected official anywhere in America, at any level, local, state, or federal, and you disagree with anything I've said so far, please call in. I will give you as much time as you need to have to say whatever you think. So we've gone through. We only have 2 people left. Let's go to Ron DeSantis. Obviously, one of the biggest names in the election at this time. Ron DeSantis, according to Real Clear Politics, is currently sitting at about 22.4%. He is pretty strong. He's stronger than even RFK Jr. He's stronger than Kennedy in trying to oppose what seems to be the obvious incumbent, the leader of the pack. He is the number 2 choice. And according to the mainstream news media, Ron DeSantis, the entire Republican field is either going to be Trump or Ron DeSantis. That's how the media is presenting it. Okay. With that understood, let's look at what does Ron DeSantis have to say about China? What does he have to say about Taiwan? Not much. Going to his website. Again, I'm going to their websites. I'm going to what they have said about this. The first thing you'll notice on Ron DeSantis' website is that there is nothing about his positions. He's got join the team, volunteer, he's got donate, he's got events. We're talking about him, but he doesn't have anything that tells us about his issues. Everyone else has issues. Whether you agree with them or not, whether they're covering the things you want them to or not, they have them. Ron DeSantis doesn't. What we do know about Ron DeSantis is that he was in the U.S. Navy, that he served in Fallujah, he served in Ramadi, he served in Al-Anbar. So he has gotten the Bronze Star, he received the Bronze Star and the Iraq Campaign Medal. There is no question that Ron DeSantis is a strong figure, that he has served his country, and I am not taking away from that in any way, shape, or form. Not at all. I respect what he has done, like I respect every veteran in the United States. No problem. But that doesn't mean he has international policy experience, and that doesn't tell us what he would do about China and Taiwan. And in fact, Ron DeSantis doesn't talk about international policy at all. He doesn't talk about the trade deals with the United States dealing with other countries. He doesn't talk about what we're doing with Iran, what's happening with Russia, what's happening with China. He really doesn't deal with that. His policies have been dealing with social issues here in the United States. And I love that he's been standing up to the far left. I love that he's been making his position very clear on abortion. He's been making his position clear on the trans political movement, not trans people, the trans political movement. He's made himself clear about trying to sexualize children, as we have seen from the far left. He's been very clear about education. But he doesn't have international policy experience. He's not even thinking about it. And he's not telling us on his website what he plans to do. Now, I know some people say, well, Mike, it's early in the process. There's no time better than now to tell us. We don't know these things about Ron DeSantis. That's why he should have a website to say, I haven't had a chance to talk about this before. Here's my position. I have to hold that against Ron DeSantis, because why did he not think of this? Why didn't no one on his team say, hey, what would you do about Russia? What are you doing about Iran? What will you do about China? And we know China will attack Taiwan. It's a matter of when, not if. What is your plan? What are you going to do about international trade? We know what he said about the jab. We know what he said about individual freedom. We don't know what he wants to do with these other things. I mean, And it's important that, yeah, he's a good governor. He deals with U.S. domestic policy and he has strong positions. Whether you like them or not is not the thing I'm talking about here. Great. Everyone we've talked about has domestic policies. We're talking about international. We're talking about the person who will be dealing with China in 2027 as they invade Taiwan, threatening Japan, threatening South Korea, and God knows how many missiles North Korea will be firing at that moment. We're talking about the militarization of the world and Southeast Asia. What will he do? And as much as, and it's great to know that he's former military, but that doesn't answer the question. That doesn't tell me what he would do or how he would do it. And it doesn't tell me, and we know he doesn't have international policy experience. These are all things that rank against him. So where do we put him? I have to say, on this issue, that puts him at a B. B plus. Agent Black out of the United Kingdom says he's a B plus. I don't have a plus or minus, so I can't say he's an A because he has no international experience and he isn't even talking about that. And he doesn't give us any insight on that. He's a strong leader. He's a motivational speaker. He's impressive. He's willing to stand by what he says, but he hasn't said a whole lot. And I know the American news media isn't going to ask these questions. They're not going to look at these candidates and say, look at what they're not telling you. Well, here it is. I'm doing their job for them. That's what alternative media is for. We're here to tell them what they're not saying because you need to know. This is important. So let's go on. So I have to say, and maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think DeSantis is fantastic. Maybe I missed Ron DeSantis talking about China. I missed him talking about international politics. Maybe I missed him talking about how he would deal with these massive issues that affect every one of our lives. Because if China goes into Taiwan, that means they're not manufacturing things for the United States. That's 40%. We're in a supply chain crush. That means we have a recession that gets even deeper and even longer. It affects us directly. It affects energy. It affects food. It affects every aspect of our lives. This is important. We need to know an answer to this. So I can't rate him higher than a B. That puts him right in line with Tim Scott. People who we know, they believe in having a strong military, but we don't know what they would do. And the rest of the world doesn't know what they would do. So he doesn't stop Russia. He doesn't stop China. He doesn't stop Iran. He may react to them, but he doesn't stop them. So Agent Black, I think you're right. He's probably right around a BB plus, but I only have A, B, C, D. So he's a B right there. People may disagree with me. They may have a different opinion. Of course, that leaves us with just one name left of the top 8 candidates at this moment that are running for the 2024 election. And how would they deal with China invading into Russia? The only other person that's left is, of course, Donald Trump, who is, at the moment, the best. He has the best polling data of any of the candidates. He's at 53.2% according to Real Clear Politics, the most independent and neutral source I can find. He's at 53.2, and if you look at that versus Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination, oh, I stand corrected. Joe Biden's at 59 now. Okay. But Donald Trump, now, Donald Trump is obviously a firebrand. Hello User has been banned. Everything is going well. Thank you for catching up. I'm going to review in just one second, but we're talking about Donald Trump. He's the last of the 8 individuals and how they would react to China invading Taiwan in 2027 if he were to win the election in 2024. Obviously, Donald Trump is a firebrand. We know that. He is a cowboy. We know that. He does things that nobody expects. and he instills fear in many world leaders. This is a fact, and actually, that's a good thing. Under Donald Trump, the United States started no new wars anywhere in the world. He's one of the few presidents since Ronald Reagan that can actually say they didn't start a war somewhere in the world. But he also believes in a strong military. He believes in America being great. He believes in keeping America as a premier, the top of the world. He believes in American excellence. And he believes in our military being excellent as well. There is no one who can honestly say to you that Donald Trump does not respect and honor the United States military. So we know that. And we know that Putin has been afraid of him. China was already threatened by him. North Korea was threatened by him. And he was able to, in between the threats, was able to begin peace talks with North Korea, something that no president has been able to do. None of them were able to get peace talks. He did. He was nominated for 2 Nobel Peace Prizes for his efforts in the Middle East, the 4 deals that he made in the Middle East to bring peace, which is a direct attack against Iran, and he scrapped the Iran nuclear deal, threatening them that if they ever get nukes, that he would destroy them. He is an ally to Israel in that regards, which we're not seeing from most of the other candidates. So Donald Trump, and going to his website to speak about this, even though we've heard him speak about it many times, and renewing American strength and leadership, which I think deals directly with this, what does he have to say? He obliterated 100% of the ISIS caliphate. He did, in fact, knock that back. He killed its founder and leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He killed the terrorist Soleimani. He kept America out of any new wars. He did reduce troops in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia. That's good and bad. You can say both sides of that. But he didn't run away, which is what Joe Biden did. He didn't abandon Americans anywhere. Throughout the entire 4 years that Donald Trump was in, Americans were not left behind, something that Joe Biden definitely has done to 30,000 Americans. And we do know that Trump he has international experience, he has international policy experience, he has relationships with all the leaders in the world, he has proven himself, he has a track record. Quite honestly, when you look at this, when we think of how would Trump deal with China, well, you have to think, well, nukes are on the table. He would send in troops. He would live up to the U.S.-Japan 1960 treaty to defend Japan. He has good relations with, or relatively good relations with, South Korea. You know what? Countries may not like him, but they respect and fear him. And that is more important than whether or not they want to have a beer. They loved having a beer with Obama. They thought Obama was a rock star, but they didn't respect him. And that's why Russia in 2014 attacked and went into Soviet Georgia. And they went into the Ukraine because they didn't respect or fear President Obama. They don't respect or fear Joe Biden. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the problem we have right now in Afghanistan and in the Ukraine. So I'm looking at this, and a user has been banned says, well, Agent Black says, Trump wouldn't let it happen. Foreign leaders fear him. And that if it did happen, Trump would respond with overwhelming force. User has been banned says, I fear that after Trump, these other countries will realize they can expect policy to change once again and just wait out their moment as soon as another weak presidential candidate gets elected. Now, that may be true, and maybe President Trump delays China going into Taiwan so that it won't happen in 2027. Maybe it happens in 2029. That's a realistic thing. Just like when President Trump was in office, Russia didn't go into the Ukraine. They didn't do that until Joe Biden in 2021, after the failure in Afghanistan, after they identify that Joe Biden is weak and is willing to run away. So maybe that is the case, but at least it stops the war. That gives us options. I'm not saying that any president's going to be perfect. We're not looking for that. We're trying to say who is the best choice when the world is in danger, when the world is teetering on the edge of 3 regional wars, when the world is looking at massive, devastating war, who is the best choice? And I have to tell you, of the list, based on all the evidence that we can point to, based on everything that has been said and everything that they have done, Donald Trump winds up being S tier. So let me review this. Let's go back over this. Of these candidates, of the top 8 candidates for 2024 at this moment, who do we have? We have Joe Biden, who has a track record of running away and abandoning 30,000 Americans in war zones, someone who doesn't remember what he's doing day to day, who has embarrassed himself around the world, someone who is definitively weak and is only concerned about the next election. We have Marianne Williamson, who believes the answer is to have a U.S. Department of Peace, who believes in meditation, who thinks that just talking about love, we love each other, just being someone who's flower power. She's basically the flower power candidate, 1960s all over again. And she thinks that would stop China or Russia or Iran, all countries that would want to kill her. Robert F. Kennedy, his answer is isolationism. Just have America stick our head in the sand and forget about it. Don't worry about the treaties. Don't worry about our allies. Don't think about the economic impact. Just put our heads in the sand and forget about the rest of the world, and it doesn't matter. That's why they're all D tier. Again, if anyone thinks I am wrong or I've misunderstood the policies of these individuals, please, let's have that conversation. I would put Vivek Ramaswamy, start with the first of the Republicans. I rank him at C. He's not experienced enough. He's young in politics. He's an unknown, which is good and bad, and he has no definitive answer about how he would deal with China in terms of military or even economically. His answer is America will do it all by itself. That's not a realistic answer. But he has no international policy experience. He has no respect on an international stage. He's very much an unknown. He's very young, and he doesn't know how to deal or hasn't explained how he would deal with China. I'd be happy to hear if he does. I don't see it. So that makes him a C rank. Next up would be Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis, who I think are, mind you, all these individuals are smart individuals. I'm not saying anyone's not smart, but I would put Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis on the same level. They're good at U.S. domestic policy. In fact, I think that's why Vivek Ramaswamy and why we're seeing Senator Tim Scott run, because they want positions in the White House. They want to be cabinet members in 2024. I think they would be excellent dealing with domestic issues here in the United States. They have an intimate understanding of what we need to do here in the United States. Ron DeSantis as well. But Ron DeSantis and Tim Scott have no international experience. They have no international respect. And they don't have a plan to deal with countries like China, like Iran, like Russia. Although, I have to say that of the two, Tim Scott is better. He at least he's been very clear about how he wants to build up the United States military and how important he thinks it is to have a strong U.S. military to be a deterrent to the rogue nations in the world like Iran, like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. He's the most outspoken on the B tier about having to deal with that. So I think you would put Tim Scott ahead of Ron DeSantis on that. Ron DeSantis is very much focused on social issues in the United States, which is something you would expect for a governor, but that doesn't make you presidential. Again, this may be on other issues that he is, but not on international policy, not on dealing with China in a war zone, dealing with China on the edge of war, the precipice of regional war. Nikki Haley is going to be A-ranked. Regardless of any other issues, she understands the problem. In 2020, when most people were not paying attention, she knew what was going on. Nikki Haley, like the U.S. Army War College, were actually talking about China invading Taiwan. She had the foresight. She's been an ambassador. She's dealt with people internationally. She has the experience. She has the relationships. She is a strong advocate for the U.S. military, understanding that force is sometimes necessary. And more importantly, the impression of force is just as important as actually putting boots on the ground. She has a plan. This is something she's been talking about for a long time now, and she has been thinking through this, and she has outreach to other nations as well. So there's that difference that we didn't see with Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis. She has the experience. She's given us plans. She has an outline of how to deal with this, and she knows who she's talking about. She knows the people involved. I would say that Nikki Haley is a very strong person. The problem is she's weak on other issues. The problem is she doesn't have an alternative to just military force. She doesn't emphasize the economic aspect of it enough. And to be fair, we're talking about international politics. Iran doesn't care that she's a woman. In fact, Iran, a nation that is poisoning its own schoolgirls for daring to read and write, that don't believe in women being able to drive a car, they don't have much respect for Nikki Haley. And that's a problem. The Chinese government doesn't have a lot of respect for women, or black people for that matter. I mean, just look at the results from The Little Mermaid. So that's another problem for Tim Scott. He's black. That's not good because communist China is racist. So they're also sexist. So that's not good for Nikki Haley. That's not good for Tim Scott. So that holds back Nikki Haley. Plus, Nikki Haley has not had executive experience. She's an ambassador, but she's never led troops. She's never been part of the military in that sense. So she's an A rank. That leaves us the only other choice. The only other choice in the field that makes any sense whatsoever. It's Donald Trump. We know where he stands. We know exactly, well, as best as we can, we know what he thinks. He's been very clear. He's been exceptionally clear in telling the world what he thinks about China, what he thinks about Taiwan, what he thinks about Iran and Russia. He's been very clear about his willingness to use force if necessary. He is very clear that he will work economically as well as militarily to get the goals that he wants to achieve, that he does not fear these nations. He's willing to go alone, if not with other nations. And he has scared these nations, China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia, into submission in the past to keep themselves calm. So we know he can do it. He has done it in the past. We have no reason to think he can't do it in the future. Now, that doesn't mean that every deal he's ever made is the best deal possible. It doesn't mean that he is a perfect candidate. But in this scenario, in 2027, if China is thinking or trying to go into Taiwan, the person who stops that from even happening, the only candidate out of the entire list of all the people we have to choose, at least at this moment for 2024, the only person who might absolutely stop China from going into Taiwan, at least temporarily, is Donald Trump. That's S tier. Everyone else on that list is reacting to what China will do. He's the only one who proactively stops China from taking action. You don't have to like President Trump. This isn't about whether you like these people or not. It's not whether you want to have a beer with them or if you want to date them. That's meaningless. The thing that's important is who is the most effective and most efficient? Who can represent America and the rest of the Western world the best? Who would have the most impact? Quite honestly, there is no one else besides Trump. Whether you like him or not, there is no one else who can proactively stop Russia, China, Iran, all of them at the same time from doing anything more than they have already done. I think that puts him at S tier. I think that makes him the S tier candidate. Now, looking at some of the comments, user has been banned in talking about Marianne Williamson is saying that crystals will heal the world. Yeah, probably. That's what she thinks. We're using the wrong crystals, and get some flowers. Yeah, that won't stop anything. Agent Black out of the United Kingdom says, would Russia be in the Ukraine if Trump was president? Would China invade Taiwan? The answer to both of those, I believe, Agent Black, is no and no. I don't think Russia would have invaded the Ukraine if President Trump was still in office. They wouldn't take action before. They're afraid of him. They fear him and they respect him. Equal amounts of both, I think, and they don't trust what he would do. I don't think they would have taken that action, as they didn't take that action while he was in office. User has been banned says, the many movie posters in Hollywood changes deleting black characters. Yeah, in China is so racist. I mean, think about it. Black Panther, the movie Black Panther, Disney had to cover up Boseman's face so that the Chinese audiences didn't know he was a black man in the suit. That's how racist China is, which is a problem for Tim Scott. It's a big problem. And they don't like most women they have problems with as well. And that's another issue. So China is sexist, China is racist. And the fact that you don't like that doesn't change what China does. That's your communism for you. And so that holds both of them back. That's why they're at the levels they are. Agent Black mentions, well, looking at the Republican candidates, almost all of them have needed the support of Donald Trump in the first place. Many of them wouldn't have the positions they have, like Tim Scott, like Ron DeSantis. They wouldn't be able to have the positions if it were not for Trump in the first place. That's a good point as well. Although that's more politics, not so much reaction to the military. User has been banned says, one thing I'd like to hear is how any of them would deal with the cyber threat and Chinese scientists smuggling research samples through airports. Well, user has been banned. I kind of think it's the same thing. Cyber attacks would probably go along with a physical attack of Taiwan, that they would attack the United States at the same time with, if we're thinking this through, 2027, China's moving forward. They bring their troops. They're actively, physically moving in on Taiwan. They'll turn off Taiwan's internet like they just did. They just turned off the internet in Taiwan now. But they would match that up with a cyber attack against the United States and probably North Korea firing a bunch of missiles either at Japan and or South Korea to completely distract the United States, to keep us busy on the cyber level, as well as to give our allies threats to keep them all out of Taiwan as a warning. So I think you would see all of that. And again, who are the people who are capable of dealing with all of that happening at once? It certainly isn't Joe Biden. He can't even handle one thing happening in Afghanistan. He couldn't even handle getting troops out, getting the American people out. He hasn't been able to, he couldn't even get 15,000 people out of Sudan. We're not talking about major nations here. We're talking about the Sudan. And he couldn't get Americans out of there. And he's supposed to deal with all of this happening, cyber attacks, physical attacks, threats on our allies. And the other Democrats, they don't have the experience, and their answer is run away or, sing kumbaya. Most of the Republicans don't have the experience and don't have a plan. So that's why I rank these people the way I have. Agent Black says, this has all been going on for years, much of it through Canada. the evidence is there that this has been a growing problem. User has been banned, says, yeah, the real issue and the experiments need to stop. Experiments, the problems that we've had with Dr. Fauci, the NIA, and NIH, and the experiments they've been doing with animals are not a good thing. And I agree. Biden really can't, he has trouble. We know Biden has trouble with ice cream. Biden has trouble walking up or down stairs. We've seen him stumble in both cases. He needs cue cards to be able to tell him where he's going to sit and who he's supposed to talk to. That doesn't inspire confidence that any world leader would look at him and go, yeah, I got to take him seriously. How do you take him seriously? He doesn't know where he's supposed to sit. He can't walk up or down stairs. That's not someone I would take very seriously. He doesn't portray himself seriously. That's why I think it's important. Now, let me say it again, folks, for everyone. And again, you can still call in to 607-242-9247. And you can give your voice on this. I will be looking at the comments after the show to see what people think. But I truly believe that this is the best way that we can rank it, that these are our choices. And right now, the Democrats are absolute the worst. Any and every one of the Democrat choices are insanely bad, and it will lead to more chaos in the world. If China is going into the Southeast Asia, we are looking at a regional war exactly the same as what we are seeing in the Ukraine right now with Russia. Europe is on the precipice of war. Japan will be on the precipice of war. That will be two regions in the world. And if you've been following this channel for a couple of years now, you know we've been talking about 3 regional wars, not World War III, 3 regional wars simultaneously. And if we are correct, in 2027, we will have 2 of those 3 wars. Europe, Southeast Asia, followed up by the Middle East with Iran. And it looks like those are the 3 major areas that are militarizing right now. And we have leaders that aren't prepared. We have a news media that won't ask the questions. I would like to be right. I would like to be wrong on this. I would like to think that there isn't war on the edge of the corner, that the world isn't going to go into hell with a handbasket. I'd love to be correct about that. But the news media, the mainstream news media, CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News, the New York Times, none of them are asking the tough questions. The questions that I have raised today with you, they won't ask because they don't want you to think about it. They are so busy trying to protect their political positions and to get their candidates reelected that they are doing a disservice to you, the public. Whether or not you agree with my ranking, whether or not you think I've picked the correct rank for these people isn't the most important thing. It's that I'm asking you to think about it. I'm asking you to consider the options. I'm asking you to think of a very likely, logical, real-world situation that the next president is going to have to deal with. And it is going to have real-world effect on you, on your economics. It's going to have a real-world effect on your safety. It's going to affect immigration. It's going to affect refugees. It's going to affect the cost of food. It's going to affect the cost of energy. It's going to affect our supply chain. It may have an impact on global health. It definitely will have an impact on global food production and distribution. This is critical. We have to have an opinion on this. You must have an opinion in 2024 about who is going to be president. Not because I want you to be a Republican, not because I'm telling you to vote Republican or conservative or libertarian. I'm not. I'm telling you that if you haven't considered these things, you may not be making the best choice, and you may regret it, just like there are some 40% of Democrats that regret having voted for Joe Biden today. We don't want to be in a position where in 2027, we're regretting the guy or gal who has to deal with China. I think that makes sense. I think this is important, and I know the news media doesn't want to have this conversation because they don't have confidence in any of the Democrats. CNN, MSNBC, they don't want to talk about this because they know the American people don't want to stick their heads in the sand. They don't want to go and give each other hugs, sing kumbaya, and think everything's going to be fine. The U.S. Department of Peace does not make peace. It makes weakness. And Joe Biden, again, he's already proven himself a failure. That's why we're in the problem. That's why we're having the problems we're having right now. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I have correctly analyzed these candidates based on what they have told us and what they have done? Have I understood their positions? Have I explained to you? Have I shared with you why, logically, why they rank the way they do? Does it make sense why we would rank these candidates this way on international policy? Does it make sense how that this is the best to worst on reacting to China invading Taiwan? Is it a fair assessment? Again, I'm not asking you, I'm not a progressive. I'm not telling you, you have to agree with me because I'm black or because I'm Hispanic. No, I'm not telling you because I'm a guy or because I'm single and straight. That's not a reason why you should agree with anyone on anything. I'm actually giving you evidence and I'm talking about the consequences. What do we understand? Because the presidency isn't about a 30-second slogan. The presidency isn't about someone you want to have a beer with. It's not about someone you like. It's not about the person that makes you feel good. It's about who makes you safe, who helps the world. I don't know how to say it better than that. User has been banned says he thinks I've had a fair assessment of the candidates. And I think it is. I have been fair, both for the weaknesses of some of the candidates and the strengths of the candidates, Republicans and Democrats. Yeah, the presidency is really important for foreign policy. And it's amazing that we don't hear about it. In 2019, we weren't hearing about 2019, 2020. We weren't talking about foreign policy. They avoided that whole thing. The news media did not want to talk about foreign policy and how Russia or China or Iran or North Korea, how they were going to react. Well, we've seen what happened because of that. Do we want to do that again? Do we want to knock down some more dominoes down that road that we're now on? Do we really want to see what happens when Iran decides that they're done killing children and they want to go and kill everyone else? Do they go over and try and kill Israel, our only ally in the Middle East? Do we really want to see what happens when Russia decides that they're not only going to invade Ukraine, but they're going to go after Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Riga, that they're going to go after Moldova and Poland? Do we really want to see that happen? Do we want to wait and just sit around until we see China go into Taiwan and then maybe Japan and then maybe South Korea, the Philippines? Do we really want to just wait for that to happen? Because that's what our media is asking us to do. They're saying, don't worry about it. That they'll tell you about it if it's important. When CNN thinks it's important, when the New York Times thinks it's important, when MSNBC and I mentioned CNBC, ABC, CBS, when they think it's the right time to ask one question, then they'll get to it. You're not supposed to think about it until they're ready and they've framed the question. They've framed the entire presidency, the entire candidacy. When they've made their choice, then you get to decide and agree with them. That's not the way it's supposed to work. That's maybe why we've been having so many bad presidents why we have so many bad laws, why we have so many ineffective people in Congress, because we've been letting the news media make the decision, not us. Because we've been waiting for the news media to ask the questions and to think about the consequences, not us. Thank God there's alternative media, because you may not agree with me. You may not agree with the reasons I've picked. That's fantastic. Have a reason. You can't tell me, well, but Joe Biden's fine because it'll just be fine. No, it won't. You can't tell me that, well, if we just have a U.S. Department of Peace, it'll just be fine. No, it won't. That's not the reality of the world we live in. It may be a fantastic conversation in an echo chamber. It may make you feel warm and fuzzy, but that's not reality. And don't tell me that your truth says that it's perfectly fine. There is no such thing as your truth. There is the truth. And there's only one, the truth. User has been banned says, the media thinks it's important when they get the clicks, but by then it's too late. Yeah. Call on in. Just call in, Graham. You don't have to ask for permission. Call in. Tell me what you think. Hello, and thank you for calling No Soundbites Allowed. This is your host, Michael. And may I ask, what's your first name?
Hey, what's up, Michael? It's Graham. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfect, Graham. Go right ahead. Before you start, let me ask.
Yeah.
I've gone through the 8 candidates now. I've ranked them, as you can see on the screen. I believe you've heard the whole thing. Do you think my assessment is fair? Not that you agree. Do you think it's fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair and it's detailed, and you have a good rubric that separates the candidates into several well-defined categories. I think you did a pretty good job with this.
Thank you. That's the big question I have. But what's on your mind? What are you thinking about all of this?
Okay. So yeah, first, I just want to say, I think this is a really good thing that you're doing for the upcoming election. And there's also a lot of time between now and when the first rounds of voting starts. So I think you and everybody else who feels called to provide their perspective on particular issues like these, I think that'll be really good for civic engagement going forward. In a future episode, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what our foreign policy should be with Mexico. Because what we talked about in today's episode was what's happening on the Eurasian landmass, I think it's called. You know, the area that where it's like China and Russia and India and a lot of those countries, and they're surrounded by the island nations, Japan, the Philippines, and then on the peninsula, like the South Korea, North Korea, Vietnam. Right. So what's happening over there? It's directly relevant for the countries of like Japan and the Philippines and the 2 Koreas because it's their area of the world. But over here in the United States, like our neighbors are Canada to the north and Mexico to the south. But it's only unless things change. It's only Mexico where we have a very problematic relationship with, specifically in terms of their cartels. And I know that there have been some political leaders in the United States who have said, hey, we really need to do something about the cartels, which may have to include kinetic responses. So in a future episode, I'd be interested to hear your informed opinion on the situation with Mexico, how it could evolve, and then maybe our options in terms of responses to it. Because it could be that in the future that we Americans end up having to make decisions regarding military and our neighbor to the south, the same way that people in the Asian region have to make decisions about what's going on in their backyard. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes excellent sense. And I think we should be it. The first thing I should say is this shouldn't just be something happening on alternative media. I should not be the only one doing this. We should see this from all the alternative media, and more importantly, the mainstream media should be doing this, but they're not. I do think you're right, and I think, if this gets well, if a bunch of people give us likes, maybe it's shared, maybe they donate, whatever reaction people have, as long as they have a reaction, even if they hate me, I will definitely want to do more of these. I'm just concerned that people are involved, that it's making people think about it, even if they disagree with me, even if whether they agree, they disagree, they think it should be an entirely different way. I'm just concerned people are thinking about it and they have reasons. So that is something I would consider doing, talking about Canada and the relationship with the United States, both economically, especially economically. We're talking about the oil sands, we're talking about trade, we're talking about gun control. And then in Mexico, you're talking about gun control, drugs, immigration from Canada too. So yeah, I think there's a lot there. And again, I'm happy to look at all the 2024 candidates, Democrats and Republicans, and say, hey, who's got the best policies for these things? Because they all affect us. Let me ask you, of the list that I did today, of this grouping, tell me, do you think I have anyone in the wrong position? Is anyone in the wrong rank? Like someone should be moved up or down?
Okay. No, I don't. I generally agree with your breakdown. I don't have a strong opinion in terms of if any candidate should be in a different category.
Okay.
I guess what I could do is I could try to make a few arguments that I think maybe some of my friends on the left would make if they were participating in the conversation.
Well, hopefully they will in the comments if they don't live. But I know there was the big thing about Marianne Williamson. They're very much, I've seen a lot of people talking about this U.S. Department of Peace. So I'm thinking that would be their focus. Am I right?
I don't know what their focus would be, but what comes to mind for me is I think the left has a more idealistic view of how warfare should be conducted going into the future, considering the risk, specifically the nuclear risk of kinetic conflict between great powers.
Well, it's interesting because the relationship, the United States is a superpower. So we're not just another nation. We are the leaders. We're also the leaders of freedom. Whether people agree with that or not doesn't really matter. That's what we are. And because of that, we have a very unique relationship with everyone else. We are mentors more to other nations, as well as the major consumers, and we're also the major innovators. And I don't think a lot of people consider that. They just think of the United States as just another country. We're not just another country. We are the leader in multiple aspects of life on this planet. And if we're not leading that, everyone is going backwards, not forward. So I think that's something that the left doesn't take into account. And when they think, and I know I downplay it as kumbaya type of feelings, but that is what we're hearing from the left so much, is they want to feel a certain way. They want to feel. That's not effective for policy. That's not effective for anything. You feel great, fantastic. Your house is still burning down. You know, you feel safe, but you just got mugged. you feel like, everyone should respect your choice on sexual identity, but they're killing women in Iran. You know what I mean? So I understand that that's what the left often, they feel a lot, but it doesn't have any impact, or it's actually counterproductive to what the rest of the world is doing. And I think they need to consider that more often. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I guess my first response would be is I think there are definitely people on the left who didn't really believe, even before Joe Biden was installed.
Yeah.
Even before he entered the
Acquired.
Oval Office, and right.
He acquired it.
In January 2021. I think even before then, there were definitely many people on the left who no longer believed in the idea that America leads the world. I think a lot of them probably, I would say a lot of them gave up on that idea when their hero Hillary Clinton did not win the presidency in November of 2016. But then, ironically, I think after Joe Biden took office, they then said, well, look, here is even further proof that we're no longer the leaders of the free world, that we have to settle for being just another country on the world stage, that we're now in, whether we like it or not, we're now in a multipolar world, and we need to adapt to that changing reality. Do you think that's a line of argument that's at least worth engaging with, even in the hypothetical?
I think it's absolute. I don't think it's hypothetical. I think it's a fact. A lot of people today are demoralized. The apathy is running rampant. I mean, that's why 6 out of 10 people don't vote in elections regularly. So apathy is real. And the apathy is, I didn't get what I wanted. I don't feel good about whatever. I don't feel good about the choices. The answer to that is, well, be accountable. Go out there and vote. Go out there and run for elected office or support someone for elected office. People aren't doing that. They're relying on, well, the media told me this is my choice. No, that's not the answer, because the media has an objective. You're actually cutting down your options, not increasing them, by relying on someone else to make the decision for your life. And so that's why they feel like, oh, see, now I'm trapped. These are all bad choices. Well, that's your own fault. You didn't get involved. You didn't ask the questions ahead of time. That's why I'm asking this question now. I want the question out there so people can spend the next year saying, what about international policy? How are you going to deal with China? What is your answer? Maybe the list changes completely once someone asks that question. But if we don't ask that question, well, we wind up in a situation where we've got now Joe Biden abandoning 30,000 Americans. And I really need to emphasize this. We just went through Memorial Day, and no one in the news media, none of the major news media that I saw, mentioned that there's 30,000 Americans that are in harm's way. Civilians that are lost in the world, in Afghanistan, in Sudan, in Ukraine. I never want to see that happen again. I want the next person sitting in the White House to be, whether I like them or not, whether I like their policies or not, I want to make sure they're never going to leave tens of thousands of Americans in a war zone. That's unacceptable. So I think that's why we need to have these conversations. And I think the left, whether they like the conversation or not, need to be involved in the conversation. It's not enough to just say, I just don't like it. Sorry, you got to be involved, because not being involved, the next time you might be you might be in the next 5,000 people that they just abandon. And then it's too late. So even if the left doesn't like it, they have to do it, because that's the only way things get better. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think another thing that people on the left would say, and maybe even this is something that people on the right could agree with potentially. Um, I think I think people on the left would say that the war that we're seeing now in Ukraine, that model is the future of warfare. That we're, that after we got attacked on 9/11 and after we sent American soldiers and sailors and airmen and guardsmen and everybody else to the Middle East, into Afghanistan and then Iraq, that was the last chapter in recent American history of us sending mass troops to foreign nations to fight wars. And that all of the future wars will be what are they? They're called satellite wars, like proxy wars, where we mostly support an indigenous population in their struggle for freedom, quote unquote freedom, whatever you want to, however you want to describe it. But they have a strong motivation to take up arms and to fight for their own destiny or future of self-governance. And our role in that is to assist them through weapons, through training, through even through intelligence and navigation and coordination and stuff like that.
So, but before you
and sorry, just lastly, lastly they would point to what's been said about this style of warfare. I think it's called over the horizon. I think it's called. That was the last thing I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, for the most part, the United States does not need and should not be involved with every nation or most nations that are having internal conflicts. We don't need to be in the Syrian civil war, but we have troops there. We're involved in that. I wasn't sold on the reason why we went into Afghanistan to this day. And I think we had a problem with the way we went in there because we didn't have goals. We didn't have objectives. Just like we're not involved in what's happening in Venezuela, and we shouldn't be. The people who want to revolt in those nations need to do it for themselves. That doesn't matter whether we give them weapons or not. That's not our fight. Same thing with Ukraine. Why are we giving them so much? It's not our fight. We do not win in that scenario. It was a corrupt government before. It's a corrupt government now. They're never going to pay us back. They can't afford it. And we gain almost nothing. But when we do get involved, we should have a clear purpose. We should have a clear objective. And we should be very clear on who we are working with. And I think that's the problem. It's not enough to say, we shouldn't be in any of these wars. Yes, we should. Some of them have reasons. There is strategic advantages, either economically or in terms of military. There are reasons why we would want to be involved in certain things. Again, that's thinking forward to the future. Why are we supporting Japan? Why do we have a pact since 1960 to protect Japan? Well, it's partially to make sure Japan never does what it did in 1940s, but also because we don't trust China and we want to make sure that the region is stable. There's a reason why we have that. Okay, I can accept that. There's a reason why we're there. Why do we have troops still in Germany? Because we're afraid of Germany. 2 world wars. We're afraid of a unified Germany. There's a good reason for that. Why do we have troops in the United Kingdom? They're our ally. They might need us. It helps to build relationships with them. That makes sense to me. Why do we have troops why don't we have troops in Burkina Faso? Because no one knows where it is and we don't care. Maybe we should. Maybe we should be funding someone there. We ran away from Sudan. Was that the right decision? Yeah, I know that's the gut feeling from Joe Biden and the left. Was it the right thing to do? We don't know because no one's even talking about what's happening there. That story came, went, and it's dead, along with 15,000 Americans. So when people say, but Mike, America, we're involved in too many things. Maybe, but the problem is in each of these different nations, Yemen as an example, Iraq, which is still ongoing, many of these nations, we don't have a goal. That's my problem. It's not that over the horizon's fantastic. We're going to use influence. Fantastic. Why? What's our objective? It's not enough to just say, well, we're going to do this. Why are we doing it? And what do we get for it? Give me a win-loss ratio, a pro and con list about what this is going to do for us, not today, not in the next election, 5 years from today, 10 years from today. Is it worth it? And if the answer is no, then why are we doing it? And finally, on that theme, for the U.S. to drop troops anywhere in the world, my answer has always been the same. We don't put troops on the ground in anywhere in the world unless we're going to take it over. One of the problems we have with Iraq, and we had with Afghanistan is we didn't take it over. Those should be commonwealths of the United States right now. We should own Iraq. We should own Afghanistan. Why? Because we put troops in there. Because we've been fighting for 20 years in there. What's the point? If we don't own it and then make it, and by owning it, we make the people free. We let the girls get to be able to learn to read and write without being terrified of whether or not they're going to be poisoned to death. That we give women the right to vote. That we bring in infrastructure so they have clean water, they have electricity, they can modernize their hospitals, they can have education for the kids, they can go to schools, that they're not constantly afraid of a bomb dropping on their head or a terrorist coming in and killing their family. We could do a lot for those people if we made them a commonwealth and we owned that place. So my problem isn't, we're in so many places. It's that we don't have a mission and we're not going in there for the right reason. You want to go in, take it over. If it's not worth taking over, we have no reason to be there. If we don't have a mission on what our influence is going to do, why are we wasting our money? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. I think we won't know. I think we won't have a solid idea of what we gained from Afghanistan and Iraq. I think we won't have a solid idea of what we gained from that for a long time. I think it'll take probably a couple more decades for us to have enough time and distance to look back and have like a real historical chain of events that happened afterwards. And the reason that I say that is because I think when people living in England, in Great Britain, back in the middle of the 18th century, so like 1750, 60, obviously leading up to 1770, 1776, people in that time period, they knew that people from England, people from Europe were going to America, but how many of them were able to foresee that America, the 13 colonies, would band together and say, "Hey, we're not interested in being ruled by the king anymore. We want to be independent and we want to rule ourselves. We want to be self-governing." How many of those people were able to even have an idea, a small idea that was coming in the future? And so that's what I think about when I think of all the places around the world that American soldiers have been sent to. Did we do more good there than harm? And is it possible that we were able to spread some of our positive ideas, like the way that our country was founded, with people getting together and saying, we're going to write a document and we're going to declare ourselves free and independent and self-governing, and then we're going to take up arms and defend ourselves from whoever would try to stop us. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I mean, there is a bunch of imperialism that went into the colonies and what they were about, and very different world structure then versus now. And again, that doesn't stop anyone. Venezuela could go and have a revolution tomorrow to improve their nation, to stop being socialists, to not eat zoo animals, and to have a better government. No one's stopping them. The United States isn't getting in the way of that. So I don't see how we're not allowing nations to do that now. They can. The problem is we have too many places where we've picked one side, like the PKK, which is a terrorist organization, according to Turkey, operating in northern Iraq, which we support and we supply. Same thing that we did to Al-Qaeda before they turned against us, before Osama bin Laden decided that they wanted to attack Americans. We were supplying them with weapons, and then they turned around against us because they never liked us. Same thing with the PKK. That's happening right now. No one's talking about it. No one in America even remembers that. But it's the same scenario. We have set up the next ISIS, the next terrorist organization in the Middle East, and that's just, they're maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 3 years out before they become the next problem, because we don't have a mission, because we're involved in something that really has nothing to do with us, that we shouldn't be involved in. And that's where my problem is. Why do it? We don't have to be involved in this fight that involves Turkey, that involves Iraq, that involves Iran, that involves Syria. It's not our fight. We don't gain anything from this, but yet we're neck deep in it. And that's a problem, because down the road, somebody's going to be mad at us because we're neck deep in this fight that has nothing to do with us. Someone's uncle, their brother, their sister, their kid is going to die because we're backing the PKK, and they're going to be pissed off and they're going to come after us. That's not worth it to me. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I think our connection is breaking up a little bit, but I guess I'll say this: the one perspective I can contribute on this is a few years back I was reading through the document of the I think it was the 2002 National Security Strategy under George W. Bush, and this was like right after 9/11. And in that document, they laid out the idea that if how do I describe them? If rebels, right? If rebels can hide in caves and use American infrastructure, including communication devices that we invented, technology that we created and spread through the world, right? Like cell phones and stuff like that. If they can use our own infrastructure to attack us on our soil, then that means that we have a new mission to make the entire Earth a place that is safe and free from terrorism.
No.
Yeah, sorry,
No.
go ahead.
No, that's not accurate. That's in a very extremist view of it. That's going to the furthest extremes of that logic, and I don't agree with that. I mean, someone could say that, and people have started wars on that same ideology. I mean, that's basically Iran's ideology. We have a religion. It's a fantastic religion. We have the Ayatollah. Everyone should believe what the Ayatollah believes. And every country that has a religion has the wrong one, so we have to teach them the right one. So we have to go and kill everybody that doesn't believe what we believe. It's the same line of thinking. That's that same extremist line of thinking. I reject that. It's inaccurate. It's inappropriate. It isn't effective. It's not efficient. It's not even realistic. Because it misrepresents and misinterprets all of the factors leading up to that end goal. I would never support that.
Yeah, I mean, guess we could agree though that in the years following afterwards that we did see a significant shift towards counterterrorism methods by a lot of the international community. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but that's only a factor of war changes. War is always evolving and changing, so the reaction to war is always changing. We don't have nations. We really don't have nations fighting nations anymore. This isn't like the early 1900s. War now is more individualized. It's more cell-based. It's more loose, like terrorist cells. We have more of that happening than we do nations. So it's the fact that war always is evolving isn't a reason to justify the actions of war. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Listen, so I think I'll wrap up by saying this. I know that you're talking earlier about economic warfare and how financial and economic is a really big, important part of warfare, and I certainly agree with that. I'll be interested to hear, maybe you'll cover it on your Sunday show, but I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are in terms of the debt ceiling negotiations that are happening today.
Yeah.
And because my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding of the current bill is that it does not put a cap on spending, and it punts the issue all the way to January of 2025, when the new president will be entering office. And if that's Donald Trump, or if it's a Republican, or if it's anybody, then this issue of the American, what's it called, American currency supremacy, that's going to be on the table in terms of will it be maintained? Will it even be possible for it to be maintained? I remember Trump in his recent CNN town hall said, the United States could default on the debt, but it might not be as bad as we think. It could be a bad week, it could be a bad day, but it might not be that bad after all. I'm paraphrasing, but sorry, go ahead.
Well, that is something I'll deal with more on Sunday, because today was more specific about this issue, about the election and the ranking of the candidates. But the debt deal is a bad deal. It's a bad deal. The petrodollar has been in danger. The U.S. is the petrodollar. It has been in danger for some time. It's under attack by China and Russia and Iran right now, a few other nations as well. So that is an issue, and they did extend it to 2025, which is stupid. People haven't taken into account that they just ushered in another 8% of inflation. We've just guaranteed another 8% of inflation by 2025. No one's thinking about that. No one's talking about that. But I'll go into that more on Sunday, now that we have the deal and now we have something we can talk about. So I do expect to talk about it then. Today is more about election, China, the interaction of foreign policy, which no one, I don't know if anyone else is talking about that on the internet right now. No one's taking it seriously. No one's addressing it. And that's a problem, because we should be speaking. Look at all the things in talking about that, look at all the issues that have connected to it, because it's all interrelated. So I think it's a very important issue. So I hope that answers that for you. It's not that I'm not dodging it so much as I'm saying, no, I want to deal with it on Sunday when we'll have more time to talk about that specifically. Make sense?
Yeah, man. No, I think going into the
That's my puppy. I'm sorry. Someone's that.
It's all right. Going into the future, we're gonna need every resource we can get, which includes our currency solvency. But yeah, man. Hey, it was a great conversation. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling in. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say on Sunday as well. Okay?
Yeah, cool, man. All right, see you.
All right. And folks, just like you heard Graham was talking about his thoughts about this and how it relates to our international policy, it affects countries all around the world, the United Kingdom, Europe, EU, Southeast Asia. It's affecting the world. This is a very important topic. Like I said, it's so important. It affects so many countries around the world, and we're not talking about it. This is like one of the only channels that's actually having this conversation. How can we not be talking about this with the election right around the corner? We need to really look at our candidates carefully about this. We really need to figure out who's going to be doing what going down the road. Sure, I'll put it on the screen again. And just to review, I know some people may have jumped in a little bit late, but the way I've ranked them is going from the bottom. We have in the D tier, we have Joe Biden. And the reason for that, as I've explained earlier, is what he has actually done with U.S. policy, the consequences of Afghanistan, of the Ukraine, of what's happening in the Sudan, amongst other international policies. We have Marianne Williamson, who is ranked in the D tier because her answer is peace and love, flower power, let's all meditate, which I think is just ridiculous. It just is not even in the realm of reality. The answer from Robert F. Kennedy. Why is he D tier? D tier because his answer is isolationism. Let's just stick our heads in the sand, abandon our allies, just give up on the rest of the world, which is not realistic and is actually detrimental to the safety of the United States. It's just a bad idea. We have the C tier with Vivek Ramaswamy for the first of the Republicans. And these are the people leading today in these polls. So it may change in the future. Vivek is young. He doesn't have experience, both as an elected official as also on international policy. And he doesn't directly address this. And his emphasis, where he is alluding to something like dealing with China invading Taiwan, his answer is economics. America will just make our own economics. We'll just change the supply chain from Southeast Asia to the United States. It's not an effective answer. B tier. But Vivek has at least a better answer than what we're seeing in the Democrats. The B tier, Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis. Good individuals. I think they have solid messages. This is not about all the rest of their policies or whether I like them or not. It has nothing to do with that. Tim Scott believes in a strong U.S. military and that the strong U.S. military is a proper deterrent to future rogue actions by certain nations. And I think that's an important point of view. Ron DeSantis, I think, is a strong leader and he has a lot of charisma, but both he and Tim Scott have no international policy experience. They're not well known outside the United States. They're both focused almost entirely on domestic issues, not international ones. So again, and for DeSantis in particular, he really is weak. He doesn't even have his issues that he's running on his website. I take that to be a very strong negative. If that changes in the future, maybe I change my ranking on him. But right now, that's a negative. What? John, try calling again. I didn't hear the phone, so try calling again. There it is. Is that? No. Yeah, are you sure you got the right number? 607-242-9247. If you call in, we should hear the phone ring, so I'm listening for it. I put Nikki Haley because she's an ambassador. She has international experience. I think she's done a really good job there. She was talking about these issues in 2020, so she is prepared. She has a plan. She believes in a strong America. So these are all important. Hello, give me 1 second before you start. And the final...
Hey, Mike.
Hey, John. Wait 1 second. Let me finish this thought. Wait.
My phone here.
Yeah.
How's that? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine. Give me 1 second. I just want to finish this last...
I can barely hear you.
Yep, I hear you fine. Hang on. And for Donald Trump, the reason why...
I got the volume turned all the way up. I can barely hear you.
I understand, but let me
I'm
finish
on
my
a
statement.
landline phone, so rather than my cell.
I understand. Let me finish my statement. And the reason why Donald Trump is S tier is because he has the experience, he has the track history, he has fear and respect around the world, and he believes in a strong military. That's why I rank him at the top. Go ahead, John. What's on your mind?
Well, two things. One, I'm looking at your ranking there. I put Nikki Haley in the A is a mistake, but you have to ask yourself, except for DeSantis, maybe even including DeSantis, are these guys running for president, or are they applying to be vice president?
I think Tim Scott is looking for vice president. I think Vivek Ramaswamy is looking.
They all are.
No, I don't. I think you're looking at Nikki Haley. I think really wants it. She ran in 2020. She was running in 2020. She's running now. I think she wants it. She has the experience. Tim Scott, I think he wants a position in the cabinet or maybe a vice presidency. Vivek, I think he wants the position in the cabinet to push his issues. I think they're all mostly issues. Ron DeSantis wants to run for it. Trump wants to run for it.
DeSantis is the only one I think that really has a shot at becoming president more than the rest. Now, his chances are probably small, but they're much better than the rest.
Yeah, that's accurate. But again, I'm being fair in my evaluation. That's also why I put in Marianne Williamson and RFK.
I never pronounce the man's name. Was it Vishwasamy?
Vivek Ramaswamy.
I think he would be above Nikki Haley. To be honest with you, I think Nikki Haley is a grifter and a rhino.
She has experience. Vivek doesn't.
Experience at what? Just sitting in the UN?
She's been an ambassador. She's dealt with international issues. She's dealt with leaders around the world. Vivek has done none of that.
She knows who they are, and she's talked to them. And she's basically was the voice of the president, which is the ambassador's job.
Right.
It wasn't her. She was just a surrogate.
And that still takes experience, and still you can still screw up as an ambassador, just like Kamala can screw up as a vice president. Just because you're the voice doesn't mean that voice is being conveyed properly. And again, my reason why I'm ranking Vivek so low is he doesn't have experience at any of this. He has ideas, he has energy. I'm not saying they're bad people or that they have a bad campaign. He just doesn't have an experience, especially in this issue.
In all fairness, I mean, anybody that has a family or in life, you fix your own house first before you try to fix other people's.
Governments aren't houses. You don't. You're not independent.
With him and Trump, as far as a lot of the things like immigration policy, voting, he's very much like Trump. In fact, Trump just announced that what they call that what they call that when you're born here, you're automatically a citizen. I forgot the term they use.
Well, yes, I think that. Again, I'm not saying that he's a bad candidate or he has bad ideas. I'm specifically looking at how to react to China invading Taiwan and the international policy.
You put foreign policy before domestic policy.
I'm in this scenario, yes.
I would rather have someone that was much stronger in domestic policy and secondary foreign policy than vice versa.
Okay, again, looking at the scenario I'm talking about, which is China invading Taiwan, who do we want as president? That's what the ranking is about. It's about foreign policy.
But we can't have a strong foreign policy unless we correct our own nation first. We get our own house in order before we start doing the other things. It's a matter of
if China, no, because if China will react or act regardless of what America is doing. In fact, if America is weak, that makes them react faster. So the question isn't...
Our strong suit has always been historically, ever since basically the beginning of the 20th century, as our economic power. Now, economic power also means military power.
Well, we don't have a strong military power now, and that's a problem. And that affects international
Well,
policy.
it's pretty strong. It's
No, we're missing.
morale might be weak.
No, we're morale is down, recruitment is down, our Navy is being downsized. We're in trouble.
And that's all because of domestic policy.
That's part of it, but it also has an impact on foreign policy. And again, what this ranking is about.
You're putting the cart before the horse.
No, I'm talking about a specific scenario. I'm talking about China invading Taiwan. I'm not talking about the presidency overall. I'm not talking about domestic issues. I didn't mention domestic for any of them. I'm talking about that scenario.
They're intertwined. You have to get them in the correct order. You have to have your domestic policy, which is economic policy, set before you can be strong foreign.
That's not necessarily true. We're talking about China invading Taiwan.
No, I know we're talking about China.
Right, and that yes, that involves economics, but it also involves military. It involves foreign policy.
They have been at war with us for, 20 odd years under one, not military-wise. They've been at war with us economically.
Yes, and they're looking, and they have promised that they are going to make it an active, physical fighting war. What do these candidates do if there is a physical war? That's the question no one has asked them.
They got that physical force through economic means.
Yes, but you're missing my point. You're missing my point, John, and I'm trying to make it clear. You're looking at a different
you're
argument.
crystal clear to me. I understand perfectly what you're saying.
No, I don't think you do. Because I'm talking about a very specific scenario. I'm not talking about the rest of the race. I'm not talking about any other aspect of the race. I'm talking about if this is happening, China invades Taiwan, which will happen at some point. If they do it in 2027, how do these candidates react to it based on what we know right now? That's a very specific scenario. Economically, they may do very different things. Economically, they may have very different issues. Domestically, they have different issues.
Do you think that these candidates won't act the same if
Yes.
Taiwan's invaded?
Yes.
They'll all act the same, so what's the point of the tier then?
No, I don't think they will all react the same. I've spent the last 2 hours explaining that they don't react the same.
Do you think Nikki Haley will react stronger than the rest, except for
Yes.
Trump?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Interesting.
On
I
that
think
specific
she's
issue.
a paper tiger. She's a nice enough person, and she did a good enough job. But she's basically an average employee. If I wasn't going to hire her, if she was part of a corporation I ran, she would be an average employee. I don't see her.
I'm not telling anyone.
outstanding.
I'm not telling anyone to vote for her. I'm not talking about any of the other aspects of her.
No,
but
I'm
on
not
this
talking about
issue,
vote for either. I'm talking about when you pick somebody, it's very much like a interview for an employee.
yeah, and this is one of the aspects people need to consider. And on this issue, in this aspect of the presidency, which is one that isn't talked about very often, I'm highlighting the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate.
So what would Trump do that we'll say DeSantis or the rest wouldn't do?
One, Trump has a better relationship with all of these individuals that no one else on the list has other than Biden. And Biden
I
isn't...
have a relationship with my ex-wife. Doesn't mean we get along.
I didn't say you have to get along. Trump has fear and respect more so than anyone on the entire list, which gives him leverage.
Why do they fear him?
Because he is, one, a wild card. Two, because he's more willing to use military might. He is more willing to use economic might as a combination. He is someone who will engage other nations to follow him in that aspect.
Would Trump put boots on the ground to fight China and Taiwan?
Yes.
You think he would?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think that will happen, but with any president, I think it's too late.
I don't.
It's going to get to a point where if China does invade Taiwan, the Taiwanese are going to act like Russia did in World War II, it'll make it so painful and so costly for them to take it over that they'll stop. I'm talking about arms and destruction and death and all the horrible stuff of war.
Yeah, I understand that, and that is not enough to win.
Does Taiwan have missile capabilities to hit the China mainland?
Only when we provide it, yes.
I'm not sure if they do or not.
They do. We have provided
Taiwanese
that.
President and the Chinese are on the beach in your country, and they're moving into the mainland, and you have those missiles, you're going to launch them. No, they're not nuclear, but they'll be missiles nonetheless.
They wouldn't do that until after they've been attacked. There are.
They might even do that first, as the ships are coming towards Taiwan.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. They'd wait until the Chinese actually land.
Well, it's difficult to say when people react out of fear.
Because they can always turn the ships around. No matter how close they go, until they land, they can always turn them around. It could always be a scare tactic.
Even a mouse will fight back if you corner it.
Yeah, and they're cornered when troops actually land. They're not cornered with troops flying around them.
They're pretty cornered now.
But they're not fighting now. So again, the difference is when troops land, it's real. Everything up until then is just a threat.
One before the battle starts.
Not always, and not in this situation.
Pretty much the groundwork, the politics of it, the public perception, the military arsenal, all those are all tied in together.
Sun Tzu would disagree.
The demoralization of the Taiwanese people, I'm not sure how strong they are. I understand they're pretty strong as far as we'll fight back. How many Chinese nationals are really in Taiwan? It's hard to say.
Well, a lot of that has been talked about, and I have talked about it on this channel before. Sun Tzu would disagree with part of your argument, but the answer is, at the end of the day, if Chinese troops land in Taiwan in 2027, one of these 8 people have to react. How will they react? Which one do we want to react? And that's why I've put the list together the way that I have. This is our best to worst case scenarios. In my opinion.
Well, why
in
is
my
it up to
opinion.
the United States exclusively then to interfere in that scenario?
Japan hasn't finished building up its military, nor do we trust
I'm
them.
talking about the EU. The EU has the same GDP and economic power as the United States.
The EU doesn't care. The EU relies on the United States to lead. And we are already seeing that the EU is beginning, at least some of its members, France.
Or to rephrase that.
Well, no, I'm
Not
answering.
the United States to lead. We're being used as chumps, and we have been since World War II.
Well, I disagree with that. But also, we're also
Pay
seeing...
for everything.
And besides the fact that we're seeing the EU generally lets America lead, either through NATO or otherwise, we also have the situation that we're seeing a fracture in the EU. We're seeing France, in particular under Macron, who is now aligning himself more and more with China, not the U.S. So we can't trust that the EU is actually going to step in on Taiwan's side, because they're beginning to take the side of China. And because the United States has been weak, they have less and less confidence and trust in us, because we don't inspire confidence.
So we're stuck. We're stuck expending blood and treasure, as they say.
We always were. We set that. That's why we've done many of the treaties in Southeast Asia the way we have. That was the reason why Japan didn't have an army until they're starting now, because we said we'll put our blood and sweat behind them. That's the only reason why Japan doesn't have an army, is because we made that promise to them.
I think it's too late if China does set foot troops on Taiwan soil.
I don't.
I don't think the Americans, even if Trump was president, would put Americans in harm's way.
I strongly think we would, and I think we should. But that's, again, the question is, who are our best leaders in that scenario? Even if you disagree with me, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with me on that.
Oh, I think Trump's the best leader out of all of them by far.
Right, and my point is to have people think this is an essential part of the 2024 presidential election. And whether people agree with me or not.
Except for the Ukraine war, which even Bernie Sanders said in an interview a couple of days ago, I really haven't been following it. The vast majority of the American people in this coming election next year are going to be about domestic issues and not foreign.
And that is a problem.
Especially with the way the economy is now.
I understand that. But and I believe that is an incomplete analysis or a judgment on the election. We have to look at these candidates more than just about domestic, because it's not an election just about domestic.
We'll go with foreign policy as the topic.
I just stated.
Who do you think Trump should pick as his vice president based on that premise? Nikki Haley?
Of the 8 candidates that we just had?
And Mike Pence is coming in, and Chris Christie is coming in.
They're useless. They're not factors. Who would I pick out of the 8 I just went over for the last 2 hours? I would pick Tim Scott.
The last 7. Trump will say Trump wins. Who does he pick as a VP based on foreign policy?
Out of the current list that I've just gone over, Tim Scott.
I'm sorry, who'd you pick?
Tim Scott.
Tim Scott is better foreign policy than Nikki Haley?
I think he's a better vice president than Nikki Haley, yeah.
No, I said use the premise of foreign policy as a guide. Who would you pick?
Well, we're not looking at the vice president. Yeah, I still would say Tim Scott.
You can't
yes.
Topics. We were just talking about foreign policy in China and Taiwan.
And I said again, yes, I still go with Tim Scott. Yes, I still think he's better.
Trump's good at domestic stuff. He's good at economic stuff. He's also good in worldwide stuff.
Yes.
But you need somebody who's a surrogate.
And I think Tim Scott is better.
Surrogate in the world.
And I think Tim Scott is better. As a vice president, I think Tim Scott is better than Nikki Haley.
Yeah, I'm only catching every third word. That's why I'm having trouble following you.
Okay, because everyone else can hear me fine. The rest of the audience hears what I'm saying. And I'm saying it again. Tim Scott is a better vice president based on foreign policy than Nikki Haley.
Okay. Why would that be?
I believe his views about the military, his involvement with the military. I think the fact that he's male, which has a factor in many nations, is also a benefit to him. I think he has less of the negatives because he's an unknown internationally. There aren't as many preconceived ideas about his agenda versus following up with Trump's agenda. Because if Trump is in...
But you're saying negatives and preconceived agenda, that's domestic issue. I'm talking about the rest of the world.
No, that's not... No, I'm talking about foreign policy. Because foreign policy, the agenda of the vice president will also involve the fact that Trump can only be a one-time president.
Vice president, but while you're running in an election, the rest of the world, Tim Scott is an unknown.
Yes, he's an unknown, but he's also the voice of Trump. There's less of an agenda for him versus Nikki Haley, who's been looking for the presidency for, now this is 2 terms. She has her own personal agenda. Tim Scott, as an unknown, is learning the position, is speaking more directly.
Agenda, for that matter.
I understand. But again, we're talking about magnitudes and we're talking about messaging. And I think Tim Scott would be a better and more effective message of Trump's voice.
Nikki Haley, UN ambassador, didn't do a very good job?
No, I'm saying that she's not a good voice for Donald Trump as vice president on foreign policy.
Frankly, I don't think any of them are worth the damn in foreign policy, but that's just me. You're picking the best one out of the worst.
You asked me a question. I'm trying to give you the best answer I can.
That's the problem when we go to vote, and you say don't vote. If you don't like any of the candidates, don't vote. But
I didn't say that. I've never said that. I've never said that. I said pick someone else.
Well, many times there is no one else.
You can write in a name.
Pardon me?
You can write in a name. Write in a name.
Oh yeah, I've done that before.
Right. So I've never said.
I got 10 votes for mayor last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, for 17 years, I've never told anyone don't vote. I've never said that.
Oh, I remember when I used to be an election inspector. We used to have the old machines. We'd run the paper out of the back. You'd be surprised how many Mickey Mouses and Adolf Hitlers that you get, you know what I mean?
About 2.5% of every election. I'm not surprised. It's about 2.5% of every election.
You're saying 2.5% are write-in?
Yeah.
That sounds about right. But what does that accomplish?
It identifies to the various borrowers, various individuals, that they're not satisfied with the choices they're receiving. It's a statement.
I mean, what does that tell the candidates that are running? What is that? Does that make them change their attitude and how they do things?
Maybe not yet. But,
so you don't get to decide who any of the winners are.
But you can.
Part,
you can.
It has no effect on the people that are running or the people
That's
in the
not
future,
true.
But you'll do it anyway.
That's not true. If you have an election that's 47, 48, 2.5% is the difference between someone having 50% or having 48%.
And that's assuming, of course, that whole entire 2.5% votes for one person. So it's really 1/100 to 1%.
No, it is the difference between 50% and 48%. It's the difference from a majority and not having a plurality. It is a difference. It does make a difference. Is it do we
Very
normally count it?
50 elections, very seldom.
We've had a lot of close elections in our time. We recently haven't. Recently we haven't. In the last election we didn't, but there have been elections which it was important. It is a factor. Is it the most important one? No, but voting is about what you believe, not what the parties offer. If you don't agree with those candidates, and we fundamentally disagree with this, we've gone through this before.
You're saying that write-in to send a message.
I'm saying write in because you don't believe in the candidates that are available. I want people to vote. I want them to vote for what they think is the right choice.
When I used to be a city councilman years ago, I ran for re-election. I used to have a store. And say maybe 50, 60 votes is a lot for a council election. So if somebody come into my store and said, listen, John, I have a petition here with 60 people on it, which is a big deal for a small council district. And this is a list of things I want to know your opinions on these topics, the top 3. And if we can't come together on it, we're not going to vote for anybody.
There's already a fundamental problem.
But if you walked into my store and said, here's a list of 60 people.
No, I reject that premise because it starts with...
People used to come in my store all the time and say, I won't vote for you unless this, and this happen constantly.
Okay, and I would tell them, vote for somebody. Vote for something.
I would express my opinion on those topics. If they agreed, they didn't. But here's my point. Say you walked in with 60 signatures and said, John, these are the 3 topics these 60 people care about the most.
Okay.
What are your opinions on it? And if we can't come together in a consensus, we're going to vote for your opponent.
Okay.
Now that's a much different scenario.
No, it's not. It's the same thing as saying that
because you're voting for nobody. I don't care.
No, they're not voting for nobody. They're voting for somebody, just not you.
It changes the outcome.
No, it doesn't, because they're still not voting for you.
No, they're voting against you.
No. It doesn't matter. They're not voting for you. So it doesn't change anything for you. You're still not getting that vote.
Think maybe some of my positions, knowing those 60 votes will sway the election.
No, it doesn't matter. Because if you're not getting the votes, they have already swayed the election. You just lost a vote. It doesn't change anything. The fact that they vote for your opponent or they vote for Mickey Mouse
there's no difference between those 60 people voting for my opponent or not voting at all for either of us?
I think there's a big difference. First of all, I don't accept... I do not accept not voting at all. I'm saying there is...
Of the 2 candidates, you don't vote for either of them.
Then it's the same thing as if they didn't vote for me. They voted for something else.
Them coming in and saying, John, I'm going to vote for your opponent.
If I get
John, I'm going to do a write-in.
John, again, we have a fundamental difference on this. If I have 100, no, it's not. No, it's not. If I have 100 votes, whether 101 people voted for someone else, or they voted for no one, or they voted for Mickey Mouse, I have 100 votes. My votes are my votes. That doesn't change. So whether they're voting for Mickey Mouse or my opponent, I only have 100 votes. That doesn't change.
Wow. You really really think that's not even close to reality.
No, you don't accept it. You don't like it. We have a difference of opinion.
No, if somebody walked into my store, that same scenario, and said these 3 topics, and I expressed my opinion, and they were in direct conflict with what those 3 topics are, and they told me they were going to put a write-in candidate instead, I would have said, okay, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. Have a good day. But if somebody said, John, we're going to take these 60 votes and vote for your opponent, I can guarantee you that has a huge difference than just writing in.
Then that's a shame. I don't accept that.
Of course
That's bad.
It's Michael. It's numbers. It's not. It's math.
We have a fundamental difference in the way we view this.
Math is math. There's no fundamental difference.
No. There is a fundamental difference in the ideologies that you and I have
because
on
those
this.
60 votes will cause me to lose in a close election, a small house.
I understand the argument you're making, John. I understand the fundamental difference.
Is that the people that are dissatisfied with both candidates.
No,
writing in a name
I understand. I understand what you're saying.
Not an attack on the two-party system at all.
I disagree with you. I fundamentally disagree with you.
Changes nothing.
I fundamentally disagree with you, and that's okay.
How's it worked out so far?
It's fine.
Candidates care about one thing.
I understand what candidates care about. I'm not talking about candidates. I don't care about the candidates.
Well, no. In order for candidates to change as you want them to,
people need to vote.
Have some incentive for them to change.
Yeah, people vote. More people vote.
But you're not voting. You're writing it in.
That is a vote, and it does affect them. You and I have a fundamental disagreement.
You're never going to vote for either one anyway. So
you don't know that.
Nothing.
You don't know that. You don't know that. You can't.
Carrot,
no.
you use a stick.
Again, we have a fundamental difference of opinion about this, and that's okay.
I don't get you at all. I really.
That's
don't.
okay.
That's a simple math. I can't even understand
It's
what you're calling.
really not, and it's okay. You don't have to understand it. It's my principle. This is what I stand on.
People that said, "I'm just going to write in somebody else's name and
I
vote
don't
for your
care.
opponent." I said, "Well, it's not going to hurt me any."
Then that's your
It's
opinion.
like somebody saying, "John, I won't come into your store ever again." Well, you don't come in at all now, so what difference does it make?
John, that's your opinion. You can have that opinion.
If I had a regular customer that said, "I'm not coming anymore," it has much more an effect on me.
John, that's your opinion, and you can have it. I don't, and that's okay.
I think writing in a vote is throwing it away unless you're telling the people.
That's okay. I disagree, and that's okay.
Wow.
I've heard your argument about it. I understand your position.
You're smarter than that, frankly.
Then I'm sorry you're disappointed, but I'm not, and that's my position. That's where I stand. You don't have to like it.
You sound like a progressive.
No, I don't.
That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it, whether I'm wrong or not.
Yes, and I can disagree with you.
I think a man could be a woman, and I don't care if you believe it or not. That's what I believe. That's my truth. It's really, you're saying the same thing.
No, I'm really not. You're straw-manning it, but that's not what I'm saying.
No.
That's fundamentally not what I've said. That's empirically, that's not what I said.
Better representation in government at local, state, and federal level. I think that's your goal.
I think, again, I can't say this enough times, and I'll say it again. We have a fundamental difference on this, and it's not changing. You're not changing my opinion on it. I've had this argument many, many times. We have a fundamental difference. We view this very differently. You do not see the value in what I'm saying, and that's okay for you.
It's not about value, it's about results.
And we disagree about the results.
What you're doing has changed nothing.
Again, it's a circular argument. You've made the same argument.
Well,
I understand
what
it.
is the definition
I do not know.
Over and over and
John.
over with the same result.
John, well, that's what you're doing right now. You've already expressed your opinion. You've told me what you believe. You told me how much you value what I say, and I am telling you, these are my principles. This is where I stand. You can choose whatever. Again, hear me out. Hear me out. You can choose whatever you want to do with your vote. I'm not telling you how to vote. This is how I vote. You don't have to do that. I've not told anyone to do what I do. This is what I'm doing. This is my principle. This is where I stand. You don't have to.
Whether it's ineffective or not is immaterial.
Whether
right?
you value it or not does not.
Value it. It's just matter.
It's not
about
yours.
What I think of the value of it.
But that's no. You're valuing. You're putting a value on my vote, which I do not accept. That's how you're viewing the reality. I don't. That's your opinion. That is your system.
You're basically saying my
truth. No, I am
truth.
not saying that. You're again trying to change.
It's really the same.
No, it's not the same.
I believe.
Again, John, you're trying to reword and rework what I have said. I've been very clear. We fundamentally disagree. I am perfectly fine with that fundamental disagreement. You don't have to agree with me.
I love you. Yeah, great. Have your opinion, but it's ineffective.
That's how you value it. I don't.
Show me that we're writing in somebody's vote instead of voting for.
I've already explained, John.
Show me why.
John, I'm not trying to convince you. I've already made myself clear. I'm not trying to convince you. You don't like it. You don't like what I do.
I'm trying to get an answer for.
I've already made my answer.
On your position.
No, I've already made it clear. No, John.
That fundamental principle is
John,
work.
I have already explained it. I've already explained it several times. I've made it very clear.
I'm not asking you to explain your position.
No, hear me out. Everything I need to say about it, I have said. You do not value it the way I do. That's okay. We're done with that. There is nothing else to be said about it. People who are listening and watching will value it their way.
So when you start to lose the argument, you want to change the subject?
No, I didn't lose the argument. I'm not having the argument. You've explained your position. I've explained mine. People will value it as they do.
Clear on why writing in is better than voting for the other two.
I think I've made it very clear. Whether or not you accept that explanation is immaterial to me. I've been clear.
But the point is to have better government in the end.
I understand, and I've made clear how I think that happens.
Michael.
What?
Is the goal for both of us, anybody for that matter, to have better representation and better government at every level?
Yes.
In the end. Isn't that what everybody wants?
Yes, and I do not believe just accepting the two choices is the answer.
I'm not talking about what we're arguing about. I'm talking about a goal.
I understand, and I said yes. We have the same goal. I want people to vote, and I want them to vote.
Your position and how you say write-ins affect that is none at all.
No. Now you've changed your argument to. I'm not even going to go through this again. I've already explained it. You're going through circles. You're going over the same thing, and we've already gone through that. You do not value my principle the way I do. That's okay. It's my principle. It's how I value it. You don't agree, and that's okay.
That's what progressives say about transgender.
No, it isn't. Again, that's a straw man. Now you're straw manning.
My opinion on things,
no,
whether you agree with it or
John.
not, that's okay.
No, John. No, that's a very different discussion, and I'm not going to get into that straw man. Trust me, I do. This isn't the first time I've had this discussion. I understand what you're doing. It's a straw man. It is
incorrect. No, it's not about my opinion.
What you're doing is a straw man. It is, and I've been very clear about my position. I'm not going to go over it again. You don't have to accept it. That's okay.
I guess that's the difference between rhetoric and effectiveness.
Again, you're trying to straw man. You're changing.
No, I'm saying
you're assigning a value.
Well, I have no doubt.
No, you're assigning a value. You're assigning your value to my principle.
No, it's not my values. It's a matter of effectiveness.
No, because we don't agree on that. Again, I'm not going through this again.
No, it's not that I don't
agree
on
John,
I'm not going over it. I don't
it.
agree on the fact that it changes and gets to the goal you want to go to.
Again, it's your. I won't say it again. We're fundamentally different. We're fundamentally different.
Facts are on my side.
Whatever you want to believe, John, we fundamentally disagree, and that's okay.
Wow.
Whatever you may think about it, that's your fundamental view. I have a different one, and that's it. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not trying to make that argument. That's not what I'm trying to do.
Have a good day.
Okay. And so for everyone else, let me make sure it's clear. I'm not trying to make you a Republican. I'm not trying to make you a conservative or a libertarian, a Democrat or a progressive. I'm not telling you how to vote. I am not telling you who to vote for. I'm not telling you whether you should write in someone's name or not. That is your choice. I am talking about the issues and what I see as the consequences. I'm talking about some of my principles and how I believe it's important that people vote, the way that they vote. You may agree, you may disagree, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not here to change your way of doing your voting. I've moved on. I was trying to move on. But I try to be respectful. I try to hear everyone's voice, and I try to have the conversation. Maybe I do it even a little bit longer than I should. And if I have, I apologize to everyone. I encourage them to vote, John, period. Straightforward. Okay, so I missed a couple of comments in there. This is about John in the conversation. Blaine, you had asked me a question. I want to try and address that. Blaine says, President Reagan and President Trump are the only time we didn't have to worry about war. And I agree with you. You asked me, do you think we need politicians working for America, for the American people, and a president that would quit meddling in other countries? And to answer your question about that, Blaine, yes, I do believe it is very important that presidents are focused on the goal, the mission of America, that America is a great nation, that we can become an even greater nation, and that the American people are the ultimate boss. The president serves the public. While there may be people in the government, in the executive branch, they serve at the pleasure of the president serves at the pleasure of the people. The people are ultimately always the boss. And every president that forgets that has failed to various degrees. The more that they remember that, and the more they are reminded of that, the more they're subservient to the public, the better our nation is, the stronger our nation is. So yes, I do think we need less interaction with other countries. And yes, we do need a president that is more focused on the public. Absolutely. And to do that, the public must be active. They must be accountable. They must be involved. That is absolutely critical. So I hope that answers the question for you, Blaine, that what you asked about that. I hope that makes my position on it clear. So that's one thing. So again, that's what the Constitution's about. That's what life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is about. Well, that's why we have our First Amendment, because we are ultimately the boss. We are the one that the president serves. He serves at the pleasure of the American people. I think that's often forgotten. And again, that's why we have to be very careful about the people we select as president. We have to look at them on the various issues and evaluate them on the various issues that will come up as president and say who is the best choice overall. And foreign policy is one of those issues that doesn't get enough conversation, and yet it has massive impact on our nation and the rest of the world. We have to consider it. It has to be discussed. It has to be something that people have to pick as a category. It's not something that we can think about afterwards. It's not an after the fact. Because we looked at the 2020 election, for many people, they looked at Biden as just, he's not Trump. And foreign policy was an after effect. And the result of that has been 30,000 Americans have been abandoned across the world, about 10,000 per year. And we've seen Russia, Iran, China, North Korea become more active, more of a danger for most of the world. And we've seen global stability decrease. So that's why I want to talk about this. And that's why I'm saying people need to have this conversation. And that's why I put together this list. Whether people agree with it or not, that's up to you. That's how I see them ranked. I think it's a fair and effective analysis that we've gone through. You may disagree. That's perfectly fine. I look forward to seeing the comments about why you might disagree or who else you might put in there. And of course, as we get more candidates, and we will, we'll see that change maybe as we learn more of it. Hopefully these candidates will answer our questions about foreign policy, about domestic policy, about the debt, and so many other things. And maybe we learn a little bit more about them and we get a better ranking. And hopefully we then are able to pick the best candidate, both in the primary and the election. And that's something that everyone in the world can look forward to. That's what I believe. And hopefully that's what most people watching the program agree with. Oh, wow. It's been 3 hours. Okay. We've been on. I didn't expect this. Well, I figured we'd go an hour on this. We went 3. Okay. I'm out. So I think I've covered this pretty well. And I think we've done this. And to answer your question, John, yes, I believe in people writing in for primaries. And I recommend people do it. If you don't like the candidates in the primaries, write in a candidate. Absolutely. I've done it. I've recommended other people do it. Write in a candidate. That's part of the process. As I've said, be involved in your local government. If you think there's a candidate that should run, ask them to run. If you don't like the choices that your local government, state government, federal government have picked, put in a different name. You go out and support that candidate. Go out and tell people why you've chosen that candidate. Advocate for that candidate. If you believe in them, you stand up and do it, whether or not they're on the ballot. I'm absolutely in favor of that. Have your voice heard. Be vocal. Be involved. Be accountable. So I don't know how to make it more clear than that. But with that said, we've been on for 3 hours. I think it's been fantastic. I do want to end the show with, hang on, where is it? I have it here somewhere. I want to thank everybody. Yes, I advocate for a candidate not on the ballot. Yes. I'm being I thought I was clear about that. Yes. Let's see. Where am I? Where is it? Hang on one second, folks. I've got one last thing I want to show you guys before we go today. We will be back every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will do a live stream with you. Hang on one second. Oops. Sorry about that. Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you covering a swath of different issues affecting overseas, domestically here in the United States, going over all the different issues. We'll be talking about the debt ceiling and so many other things. And some people will find the conversation to be pointless, but that's okay. I think it's important. I think it's worthwhile talking about, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Even talking about the issues that you think are important all around the world. Whether or not anyone else thinks it's important, if you think it is, I want to hear what you have to say about it. These are all conversations I think we need to have. And that's what the point of this channel is. With that said, I want to show you, here it is, okay? Finally, it came up. Here it is. So I'll show you this, and then then I'll see you Sunday. And this is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, admitted he has not read the Arizona immigration law. Let's think about that for a moment. I know it is a difficult task to stand up in front of our peers and say that Congress has failed to listen to voters.
You here at CPAC said yes to President Donald Trump in 2016, and I know you're going to say yes to... She was very aware that she had the flag in her hands and that the flag was dragging on the ground. That is a intentional action. She knows what she is doing. She then drops the flag. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about.
I held the AR-15 in my hand. I wish I had it. It is as heavy as 10 boxes that you might be moving And the bullet that is utilized, a 50 caliber, these kinds of bullets, need to be licensed and do not need to be on the street.
That's right. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, a representative in Congress who is writing laws to deny American citizens their rights, has no idea what she's talking about.
And they are against the vaccine mandate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you support that?
We shouldn't have any problem in meeting that error rate, because last time I checked, there were not a lot of planes crashing into each other at airports, right? You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.
No one wants to point out the quote from Joe Biden where he is admitting that he is willing to lie to the American people. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being part of the audience.